them on a tour of parliament because I was so impressed. They have done something for the future generations, and it will be remembered that it is during their time as Sunday school officers that it happened. So I love them and we thank God for them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I will give the Honorable Member from Mundanyi, Honorable Danson Mwashoko, exactly 1 minute to welcome the students from Coast Region.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker. Kwanza nikushukuru kwa nafasi hii. Nichukue nafasi hii kukaribisha vijana wa Kenyatta University ambao ni vijana wanatoka Pwani. Mheshimiwa Speaker, vijana hawa ni karibu vijana 100. Leo waliona ni vyema watembee katika bunge la kitaifa ili wakaone ni vipi basi tunafanya kazi katika nyumba hii ambayo imeheshimika. Mheshimiwa Speaker, Mheshimiwa Speaker, wanafunzi hawa wamebobea sana katika masuala ya masomo, katika masomo tofauti tofauti, lakini kando na masomo, Mheshimiwa Speaker, hawa ni viongozi ambao tunatarajia sana ndani ya miaka 2-3 wanapomaliza masomo yao ya chuo, basi wengine wao hata watakuja kuwa wabunge na maseneta na viongozi katika taifa letu la Kenya. Kwa hivyo kwa niaba ya wenzangu wa Pwani, mimi nikiwa mwenyekiti wa vuguvugu la wabunge wa Pwani, chairman wa Coast Parliamentary Group, nachukua nafasi hii kuwakaribisha katika bunge la kitaifa vijana wetu kutoka Pwani, wajisikie wako sawa, wako kwao, na wajue sisi wabunge wao tutafanya kazi ili masomo yao yasitatizike, lakini pia tutafanya kazi ili nchi yetu ipate kutafuta nafasi za ajira. Wanapomaliza shule, wanapomaliza vyuo, wapate kazi na wabadilishe hali za maisha za kwao nyumbani. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker. Karibu vijana wa Kosaku ambapo ni kutoka Kenyatta University. Mheshimiwa Speaker, pengine niseme tu, mimi nikiwa Kenyatta University mwaka wa 99 mpaka 203, sisi ama mimi na wengine ndo tulianzisha hii Coast Student Association kule Kenyatta University. Kwa hivyo nikiwaona hapa nafurahia, maana najua kazi tuliofanya wakati ule leo hii bado inabobea na bado wameshikilia umoja wa Pwani. Asante Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Honorable, what's your point of order, the Honorable Minority Leader?
Thank you very much, the Honorable Speaker. Before I get to my substantive issue, I just want to echo what the Leader Majority had said earlier on the appearance of Cabinet Secretaries. You know, today I came here eager to meet my good friend Moses Kuria, but unfortunately he's not been able to come. But Honorable Speaker, you know, Moses Kuria had one time written to this House, to the speakers, I think, asking for a high-level meeting to discuss how government business is to be processed in this House. So I would have expected him to be the first person to come here so as to be able to be seized of these issues. But all the same, that is by the way. I hope that in the coming weeks we shall see more and more of the CSS coming on time and as invited. Honorable Speaker, the issue I'm raising on a point of order on is the matter of the... Oh, sorry.
What's your point of information, Majority Leader?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I thank the Leader of Minority for allowing me to inform him, because I responded to that particular letter that the Honorable Pio Wandai refers to, when the Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria wrote to the Speaker, asking the Speaker that he wants to convene what was termed as a high-level meeting to discuss how Parliament will process government bills. Honorable Speaker, when we requested the Ministry of Public Service and Delivery, because, Honorable Speaker, we understood probably Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria might have confused this House as part of the public service, and he wanted therefore to supervise how we do our work. And we checked with his ministry what were their concerns, what bills had not been processed. Honorable Speaker, it's important to put it on record that when we checked the list of bills that Moses Kuria sent to us that were pending, 9 bills had already been assented to by His Excellency the President, having been considered and passed by this House. 52 out of the 56 regulations that he claimed were pending in Parliament, 52 had already been adopted by the House. Some of the other bills that he claimed had not been processed as government bills was a bill belonging to the leader of minority. And I do not know whether the leader of minority processes any bills on behalf of government. It was a private member's bill belonging to the leader of minority, and therefore we duly informed the cabinet secretary and also appraised him with the current structure of government, that the office charged with the responsibility of coordinating work between the executive and the legislature is the office of the prime cabinet secretary. And therefore that matter, I believe, was put on the Honorable Opio, and we did respond appropriately to Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria. But I agree with Opio and the same way he wrote should have been him writing to the House, not his principal secretary.
We proceed, Honorable Mandai.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the issue I wanted to raise is this, and it's very important that we pay attention as members. The financial year 2023-2024 is just 3 or so months shy of coming to a close. And you know, Honorable Speaker, the performance of the budget is dependent to a large extent on how monies are released, on the exchequer releases and the absorption of the exchequer releases by the respective ministries and state departments. Honorable Speaker, we know that every budget cycle we undertake public participation. And upon such public participation, monies are appropriated. I am talking specifically about public participation money in the Ministry of Roads, in the State Department of Roads. That money is budgeted for every other financial year. And this financial year I'm talking about, that not even a single cent of that money has been disbursed. From the National Treasury to the ministry, and from the ministry, therefore, to the respective agencies. For budget performance, the kind of employment generation we are talking about through the housing project, the affordable housing project, is the same kind of employment would generate through roads maintenance and constructions. So what is good for the goose is certainly good for the gander. If employment can come from affordable housing, it can similarly come from road maintenance and construction works. Therefore, my issue is this. What is it that is stopping the National Treasury from releasing funds towards public participation budgeted works in the State Department of Roads? And this is an issue that concerns every member here, because those roads don't exist in the air. Roads are in the constituencies which we represent. We don't want a situation where once money has been appropriated, then some people go and sit in some dark corner somewhere and determine which one to be disbursed, which one not to be disbursed. That would certainly be tantamount undermining the authority and power of this August House. So I want to plead with you, Honorable Speaker, to allow a few members to contribute to this very important matter, because this is a matter that is so serious that can cause problems between this House and the executive. Honorable Speaker, this House remains an independent institution. We are not beholden to anybody, any other authority. We only defer to the Speaker when in this House. And once we make a decision such as passing an appropriation bill, which then becomes an appropriation act, and money continues to be collected by KRA, the money must be disbursed. You must release the exchequer to the respective, and especially on a matter concerning roads, we won't allow you to get away with it. So I would want you to compel Leader of Majority to follow up with the National Treasury and come back here with a definite statement, if possible tomorrow. But before you do so, please allow some members to ventilate so that we can get the gist of the matter. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. I will If there's interest, I'll give at least 2 and 2, and then we move to the next order. So you need to key in on intervention. And the first intervention I see here is the Honorable Bashir Abdullahi. Do you want to speak on this? The Honorable David Gikaria is in the House at intervention. Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the Majority Leader for being very candid on matters of these cabinet secretaries and what they do. Honorable Speaker, it is very unfortunate. Last week, it was the same excuse. This week, and you know how important in the last parliament when we came and we amended our standing order so that we can allow cabinet secretaries to be coming here instead of committee chairs coming to answer questions that are written. So we needed and that is how important it was for these cabinet secretaries to be coming before the floor of the House. So it is important, Honorable Speaker, as Majority Leader has indicated. We must also, I think, something that we forgot, in case of now this could be a trend. And you can imagine a week, 4 weeks in a month, they only come 4 times. If we don't make it then, it means pushing forward. Most importantly also, Honorable Speaker, is also that they have that tendency also of not even coming before committees. That every time you try to request a cabinet secretary to come before a committee.
Order, Honorable Gikaria. You know, we had moved from that matter you are discussing. And we were now dealing with the point of order that the leader of minority rose on. So I want to declare you out of order and give the Honorable Mwenje to speak on this. Mwenje, you may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the issue that has been spoken by the leader of minority, I can't emphasize it further than even what he's already done. Because money that has already been appropriated for purposes of roads. Honorable Speaker, I want to speak even about Nairobi, Honorable Speaker. We have so many roads that have remained undone. We have money that was appropriated even in previous parliaments. We have pending bills that have remained unpaid so that those contractors can complete some of those projects, Honorable Speaker. So it is important that the Ministry of Roads, and more so the CS, ensures that those funds that have been appropriated here by this House are used effectively as per what was agreed on the floor of this House, Honorable Speaker. Because otherwise, we end up in a situation where money which is supposed to build roads in our constituencies is not getting there, as has been mentioned. And that is affecting us, Honorable Speaker. So we want to ensure, kindly, the Ministry of Finance must ensure these funds are released and they are utilized the way they ought to be used for purposes of development of our roads, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'd want to request there are members here who wanted to contribute to this issue, Honorable Speaker, if you can allow it to be 4-4 so that we can ventilate on this issue and just keep it under 1 minute, Honorable Speaker. Kindly, your indulgence, please.
The Honorable KJ.
Honorable Speaker, this is an extremely serious matter. And I want to support the Honorable Leader of Majority for raising this matter. The Honorable Leader of Minority. It affects every single constituency. Honorable Speaker, some people might be imagining that Nairobi is extremely well covered in terms of road network. But when you think about it, even previous programs on roads in Nairobi have actually failed. The most recent one being the roads that had been earmarked for development in slum upgrading program. Mr. Speaker, we are on record in this House as members of Parliament saying that the work that was done was extremely shoddy. People were laying cabro on what you call cotton soil in our constituencies, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the big issue here is Parliament taking its place, its rightful place in budgeting. No other house, no other institution, no other entity has the role of appropriating monies in the budget. And when it is appropriated by Parliament, everything else is automatic machination to ensure that it gets to the constituency, and no one should appropriate responsibilities that they are not their own to go and appropriate after Parliament has appropriated. So, Honorable Speaker, allow me 1 minute to also add that the questions that are asked in this House, some of them, time is of essence. So when a cabinet secretary does not show up, for example, the cabinet secretary was to be appearing today.
Order, Honorable KJ.
I'll just be very short on this one.
We had actually dealt with a matter of questions. So you have made your point.
Yes, I'll be 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
No, the interest is very high, so please take your
much
place.
Much obliged,
Honorable Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want to also reiterate what the minority leader has said, especially the issue of roads. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, the CS in charge of finance must wake up and do his job. It looks very easy, Honorable Speaker, to sit in an office and fail to know that Kenyans are out there suffering. I just want to look at a scenario, Honorable Speaker, a situation where El Nino was here with us. The roads up country were damaged. And immediately after the roads were damaged, there were promises that they'll be done. In addition to that, Honorable Speaker, there is also the money that was voted for in this House that was meant for RML to go down to various constituencies. That money has not been dispersed. In addition to that, Honorable Speaker, there are also those roads which were begun some times back in form of tarmac, like the C41 in my constituency, Honorable Speaker. It is not done in really sense, Honorable Speaker. What has happened is supposed to be maintained. That has not been done. There is no money which has been sent to that. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it's important. Let the CS in charge of finance be called to order by this House and let him live up to the role that he was given so that he can get us the money in our various constituencies. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Finally, the Chair Rhodes. Are you in the House?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I followed what the leader of minority has raised, and I want to agree with the House that we do appropriate budgets, but the responsibility to release funds is of rise with the Treasury. So we have done our part. The part to release, the responsibility to release funds is with the ministry. I do not want to say more on this matter. Thank you.
Very well. I think we shall close that matter at that particular level, unless the leader of majority wants to speak on it.
Yeah.
Yes, let's hear the leader, and then we wind up on that particular matter.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me thank the leader of minority for raising that issue. And public participation, Honorable Speaker, is a constitutional imperative. And since the advent of this new constitution, every year, the Budget and Appropriations Committee has devoted funds to public participation, which must be disbursed as approved and appropriated by the House without any undue delay. However, Honorable Speaker, there are also other issues. And I am certain many members here are aware of the other issues pertaining especially to the sector of roads. But I will pick up the issue on the actual public participation money other than the others that members are aware of, part of which is an issue that was addressed here by the Cabinet Secretary for Roads when he appeared here. And Honorable Speaker, because there is that other matter that was very well addressed by the Cabinet Secretary for Roads, which I am certain we do not want to delve into now. But for the public participation one, I will get to the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, to first provide us with a list so that we ensure that it is in the counties that we carry out public participation. Because public participation ordinarily, and I see the Honorable Dan, member for...
The leader, order. The leader is on a point of order. Let him proceed. Proceed, leader.
Thank you. Honorable Dan Mwashako is a seasoned member of the Budget Committee, and we will tell you the public participation funds are usually done, we used to do them for about 11 counties per year. So that by the end of 4 years, we have covered all the 47 counties. And the budget that is available for that exercise, ordinarily we had started with 1.2 billion. I think by 2019, when I was shipped out of the Budget and Appropriations Committee by the previous regime, we are approaching about 1.82 billion shillings. And I know that amount of about 2 billion shillings is still available for public participation, including this year. But it's also important, Honorable Speaker, that the Budget and Appropriations Committee makes it a very open and transparent system where in your report you inform the House which particular counties are you doing public participation in a particular year, so that you also get the involvement and ownership by these members of parliament who represent their constituencies. So, for instance, when you're going to Siaya, the leader of minority should know that you're going to Siaya, so that he mobilizes the public to come and give you the projects that are of priority basis to the people. Because, Honorable Speaker, there is always a temptation for people to sit and appropriate resources based on what they think are priorities for people. The essence of public participation was when the Budget and Appropriations Committee goes for public participation in the identified counties, they're able to get issues that are of pertinent concern to citizens within that particular county or constituencies, and were not factored in the budget, and have them factored in the budget. But I think, Honorable Speaker, with time, unfortunately, and I say this unfortunately, we have begun losing the very essence of that public participation, and we need to get back our rails on track. But, Honorable Speaker, the issue raised by the leader of minority, as I have said, I'll pick it up with the National Treasury.
Honorable members, that matter will rest there for now. Before we move to the next order, let me acknowledge the presence in the House and in the Speaker's Gallery, Othaya Girls High School, Othaya constituency, Nyeri County. Honorable members, let me also acknowledge in the public gallery this afternoon, Elbagon Secondary School, Molo constituency, Nakuru. Any member of parliament from Nyeri, just to welcome those students, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to take this opportunity to welcome Othaya Girls Secondary School to this August House. This is one of the leading institutions in Nyeri, and that is performing very well as next to a county school. And Honorable Speaker, this opportunity for these young girls to come and get exposed to the proceedings of the August House as we debate on matters that are of national importance and that affect the population and the nation as a whole. I want to encourage them to take note of the number of women legislators who are in Parliament today. And actually, Honorable Speaker, I want to commend the ladies because quite a number are present today. And this is an inspiration to them that they can aim higher, and this place is also a destination for them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next order. Order, members, we move to statements. The Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44-2D, I rise to make a statement on the leadership of the Committee on the Members' Services and Facilities and the Committee of Powers and Privileges, which were reconstituted on Tuesday, 5th, 2024. Honorable Speaker, Standing Order 212B establishes that the Committee on Members' Services and Facilities and provides that the committee shall consist of a chairperson and not more than 14 other members who shall be approved by the House at the commencement of every session. Further, Honorable Speaker, Standing Order 178-1 partly provides that unless provided under any written law, standing orders, or by resolution of the House, a select committee shall, upon appointment, elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson from among its members. Honorable Speaker, following the reconstitution and approval of the members to serve in the committee on Tuesday, 5th March 2024, pursuant to Standing Order 212B3, the Clerk of the National Assembly, in exercise of the powers conferred under the provisions of Standing Order 179-2, declared a vacancy of the office of chairperson and vice chairperson of the committee on Wednesday, 6th March 2024. Honorable Speaker, Standing Order 179-1 requires that the clerk to appoint a place and date and time of the first meeting of the committee within 7 days of its constitution by the House, or such other further period as the Speaker may approve. In compliance with the said standing order, the clerk appointed Tuesday, 12 March 2024 at 4 p.m. as the date and time for the conduct of the elections, which took place in Room 9 at the main Parliament buildings. Honorable Speaker, Standing Order 179 specifies the form of a candidate's nomination paper as prescribed in the 5th schedule to the standing orders. The nomination papers were issued as prescribed and whereof by the deadline on the submission of the nomination papers on Monday, 11th March 2024 at 5 p.m., the following honorable members had submitted duly filled nomination forms. They are as follows. 1, the Honorable Dr. Stephen Wachira Karani, MP for the position of chairperson. And 2, the Honorable Faisal Bada Salim, MP for the position of vice chairperson. Honorable Speaker, Standing Order 179-12 provides that if only one candidate is nominated for the election as chairperson or vice chairperson, the clerk shall, at the expiry of the nomination period, forthwith declare that that candidate as elected without any vote required. Consequently, having received only one nomination from each of the position, the clerk declared the Honorable Dr. Stephen Wachira Karani, MP, and the Honorable Faisal Bada Salim, MP, duly elected as chairperson and vice chairperson of the Committee on Member Services and Facilities respectively. Honorable Speaker, in line with Standing Order 179-14, I therefore notify the House that the Honorable Dr. Stephen Wachira Karani, MP, and the Honorable Faisal Bada Salim, MP, were duly elected as chairperson and vice chairperson of the Committees on Member Services and Facilities respectively. Honorable Speaker, the House may recall that the Committee of Powers and Privileges, which is chaired by the Right Honorable Speaker, was also reconstituted on 5th March 2024. Whereas the law establishing the committee does not provide for the office of vice chairperson, it has become an established practice of the House for the Speaker to designate a member of the committee to perform the duties of the vice chairperson and represent the committee in the liaison committee. In this regard, I also notify the House that the Speaker designated the Honorable Joseph Lekuton, CBS MP, as the vice chairperson of the Committee of Powers and Privileges, who shall also sit in the liaison committee as the Speaker's representatives. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 8, the Regional Development Authorities Bill, National Assembly Bill number 7 of 2023, second reading, resumption of debate.
The Honorable Tindi Mwale, not being in the House. The Honorable John Mutunga, had you spoken on this? Honorable members who could refresh the screen, remove your cards and key in afresh, because most of the members who are on the list are not possibly interested in speaking on this. So, very well, you can now key in. Very well, the Honorable Maina Madenge, Nyeri Town. Had you spoken on this? I suspect you had spoken on this. The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi. Is Ferdinand Wanyonyi in the House? Not ready. The Honorable Makali, Mulu.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank you for the opportunity to add my voice into this important bill. I was prepared to do it yesterday, but time did not allow, so I'm very happy that now I have the opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to start by supporting this important bill, the bill on regional authorities. As opening remarks, Honorable Speaker, we all know that we have quite a number of these regional authorities in this country, and most of them have been administered from different acts of parliament. So it's very important when I see one bill which attempts to consolidate all the regional authorities into one bill, Honorable Speaker, because that is going to ensure that we streamline the operations of these regional authorities by having a uniform structure on how to manage them. But even as we do that, Honorable Speaker, it is important that we look at some of the challenges which have been faced by these regional authorities, so that we make sure that this final bill, when it becomes an act of parliament, those challenges have been adequately addressed in the bill. Honorable Speaker, one of the challenges we are facing in this country with regional authorities is the challenge of inadequate funding. Honorable Speaker, normally these regional authorities are supposed to be serving the development needs of this country. That means you need both a recurrent budget and a development budget, Honorable Speaker. But over time, what has happened, because of inadequacies of funding, you realize that the recurrent budget is being provided, and in most cases, very minimal budget for development. So, they don't end up serving the purposes for which they are created. So, one of the things you need to be very clear on, Honorable Speaker, is to make sure that these important authorities in this country, we must provide resources for them so that other than just paying salaries, they go to that extra mile to ensure that development is also implemented in this country through them. Some of them play very key roles, Honorable Speaker. For example, those ones in the water authorities. Water is a major problem in our ASO and semi-ASO areas in this country. And if those authorities were effective, if they were efficient, they would have done a lot in sorting out that matter. So for me, from where I sit, one of the reasons why I'm supporting this bill would be to have a structure, a financial framework, to make sure that they are adequately funded. The other matter which is critical, Honorable Speaker, and which keeps on coming up every time we see it, is the issue of duplication of roles, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you realize that some of the work they are doing, duplication is at two levels. There's duplication at the national level, and there's duplication at the county level. Honorable Speaker, some of the functions being performed by these local regional authorities, Honorable Speaker, you realize there is duplication. There is a lot of, you take one and another one, you find that they are doing almost the same thing, and it's like where one stops, it's not very clear, one stops, another one starts. So you find there is overlap. And one of the things should be sorting out, Honorable Speaker, through this bill, is to ensure that each of the regional authorities which is going to remain after restructuring, Honorable Speaker, that we have a very clear mandate for them. So that, for example, I want to say this, Honorable Speaker, about 2 weeks, we did visit my constituency, where we have the Tanathi Development Authority, and we have then the National Water and Harvesting Authority. Water and Water Harvesting Storage Authority, Honorable Speaker. Now, you find one of the dams we have in my constituency is called Kalundu Dam. Kalundu Dam was done by the National Water and Harvesting Authority, but after completing the implementation, Honorable Speaker, there wasn't that proper handing over from that dam to Atanathi, which is now the local authority covering our area. So because of that lack of proper handing over, you find that that dam currently is not serving the purpose you were supposed to be serving, Honorable Speaker. Because the river is polluted, the intention was to do small-scale irrigation in the area. But because there was no proper handing over, then we have faced that challenge of the dam being there, but not really serving the purpose. So one of the areas we must address, Honorable Speaker, is to ensure that even at the national level, Honorable Speaker, we don't have overlaps in terms of functions. In that case, then we'll be able to have them serving specific functions and helping Kenyans. The other level of overlap, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the county and the national government. Honorable Speaker, most of the functions being performed by these regional authorities are devolved. For example, water is devolved, Honorable Speaker, and you find that it is not clear what the county government needs to do and what the authority needs to do. And it's also not very clear at what point do they work together because they are doing the same function. So that confusion, Honorable Speaker, what has happened is that because of that confusion, then you have conflict always. That what the regional authorities are doing, Honorable Speaker, county governments are complaining that they are taking over their role. So we must also make sure through this bill, Honorable Speaker, that we come out clearly in terms of what belongs to the county government and what belongs to the regional authorities. In that case, then we'll minimize the authority. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, the county government are also having an argument that it makes sense that the reason why they are not getting the rightful share in terms of equitable sharing is because some of the money which should be with them is being left at Nairobi to take care of functions which are already devolved, Honorable Speaker. So in that case, they are saying, if we were very clear in terms of what is devolved and what is not devolved, then county governments will be able to get more resources from the national government without even adding any resource from in terms of revenue collection, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, these are some of the critical issues I think we need to address as a country. The other thing is the issue of the administrative framework, Honorable Speaker. In most cases, these regional authorities have been used as the employment bureau, Honorable Speaker, where the politicians, as included, see these bodies as a way of creating employment for our supporters, Honorable Speaker. And then time you visit them, you look at the board composition, you look at who is employed there, Honorable Speaker, you will find that there is a very close alignment of the minister and the people working in those bodies and authorities. In that case, Honorable Speaker, then you find that we lose what I will call the issue of focusing more on competencies so that we get people who can manage them. And that's why the other day you had the Deputy Majority Leader saying, I wishes that the Coast Development Authority was being managed by people from the coast. Because to me, that's just a clear confirmation that we are thinking of areas where we create jobs for our people, which is not the right way, Honorable Speaker. So as we enact this law, Honorable Speaker, we must make sure that when it comes to matters of who joins which board and matters of who is employed where, the focus is more on how do I relate the connections you have as opposed to the merit. And I think time has come that as a house, we need to make sure that now we focus more on merit, Honorable Speaker. And if we do that, then we'll be helping this country. The last point, Honorable Speaker, as I allow other members to contribute, is the point of the numbers. We have so many of these regional authorities, Honorable Speaker. You wonder whether the number we have should be the optimum number, Honorable Speaker. I do believe we could do with a smaller number than we have and still achieve the same outcome. So to me, from where I sit, we should be looking at it from what do we want to achieve at the end of the day? What result do we want to achieve? And then what do we want to achieve at the end of the day? What result do we want to achieve? And then work backwards, Honorable Speaker, coming to a point to say, how many regional authorities do we need to achieve the desired result? If we go that way, then we will get the right number, Honorable Speaker.
So the Miriu hydropower was implemented in 1990. Now, Honorable Speaker, Mwache Dam multipurpose development project implementation is ongoing. Now, Honorable Speaker, now in addition, there are several concepts and feasibility studies on integrated multipurpose projects by the various regional development authorities at the stage of resource mobilization. And Honorable Speaker, it is worth noting here that RDS have done a lot of feasibility studies, and therefore they are at a stage of trying to mobilize resources so that they implement what they have already projected to do and what they already have done feasibility studies on. Now, some of the projects where the RDS have done feasibility studies, Honorable Speaker, include the following: the High Grand Falls Multipurpose Reservoir on River Tana, Nandi Multipurpose Reservoir on River Yala, the Magwagwa Multipurpose Reservoir on River Sondu. Now, Lower Ewaso Nyuro River Basin Integrated Multipurpose Dams Project, Aror River Basin Integrated Multipurpose Project, the Takwel Downstream Irrigation Project as part of the Takwel Dam Multipurpose Integrated Project. Honorable Speaker, it is also worth noting here that the regional development authorities transcend counties. You will find that one regional authority, Honorable Speaker, covers more than 4 or 5 counties. And it is therefore important to know that the works done by counties may not really be equated with the works done by the regional development authorities. Now, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that counties have their work cut out, and this bill is now trying to standardize the memberships of boards of RDS, and in our committee report we recommended, which we will bring at an appropriate time, 9. Then 2, we want to bring all the RDS under one act. Honorable Speaker, now with this many, because I see time is up, with these few remarks, I want to ask honorable members of this House that we pass this bill.
Give him 1 minute to conclude.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for adding me 1 minute. Honorable Speaker, I was requesting honorable members that we pass this bill, move to the next stage, where we have also proposed as a committee amendments, including amending the number of board members from 12 to 9 and other amendments that as a committee we have proposed. Honorable Speaker, with these few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. The question to this particular bill will be put during the next session. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, compliance to Article 54(2) of the Constitution regarding employment of persons with disability in public institutions.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunities. Is the chair in the House?
Yes, I'm here.
Proceed.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I have been waiting for this for a long time, me and my team. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity requests this House to adopt the report of the report of the committee on the compliance of article from position of persons with disability in the public institutions pursuant to Article 54(2) of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, to achieve this objective, to sample 39 public institutions for its report on the compliance of the status of employment of people with a disability. Subsequently, the committee invited the compliance with the same. The main objective of the inquiry is to assess the representation of people with a disability within the public institutions of Kenya. Specifically, the committee requested the institutions to provide the following. 1. Status of compliance with Article 54(2) of the Constitution on composition of persons with disability in the institutions. 2. Assess the distribution of persons with disability across different cadres of institutions. 3. Measures put in place to make sure workplace is suitable and friendly for persons with a disability. Honorable Speaker, in this audit, the committee observed the need for public service to ensure equitable opportunity for the appointments, training, advancement of persons with disability. However, the committee notes that since the promulgation of the Constitution 2010, the public institutions have not complied with the required threshold for persons with disability, which is 5% as per the Constitution. Unfortunately, the average percentage of persons with disability representation in the institutions is 2.1%, where the Constitution says minimum of 5%. The average for 39 institutions is 2.1%. Honorable Speaker, additionally, most institutions that appear before the committee submitted that they do not receive applications from persons with a disability as required, hence low representation. Despite the provision of Article 54(2) of the Constitution 2010, which requires persons with disability should of adoption of this should initiate the amendment of persons with disability Persons with Disability Act to align with Article 54(2) of the Constitution. Number 3, within 6 months of adoption of this report, the public institutions should formulate, put into effect, comprehensive disability mainstreaming policies to encompass all facets of the workplaces. Number 4, within 3 months of adoption of this report, the National Council for People with Disability should make positive measures to facilitate comprehensive registration of persons with disability in their database. 5, the institutions should implement affirmative action focused on retirement, on recruitment, outreach efforts, awareness campaign to increase the representation of people with disability. Number 6, public institutions should align their human resource policies with the requirement of the retirement age for people living with disabilities and inform people living with disabilities their rights. Number 7, institutions should submit reports to National Council of People with Disability and encourage people with disabilities to participate in decision-making processes and challenge the cultural norms through campaigns and education. Honorable Speaker, sir, it is even after this report, after these 39 institutions, the committee went ahead and looked into so many others, maybe about 60-something institutions of the government. And all in all, the average is 2.1. This is a gross violation of the Constitution, Article 54(2) of the 2010 Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I submit And I take this opportunity to request my deputy, Honorable Chelile, to second. Asante. Angoja nini?
Honorable Chelile.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kunipatia nafasi huu. Niunge mkono mswada ambaye imeletwa kwenye bunge huu na chairman wangu, chairman wetu wa National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. Nimefurahi sana leo hii report kufika mbele ya bunge hili. Tumejaribu kwa muda wa wiki karibu 4 tukiketi hapa kwenye hii bunge. Kwa hivyo nimefurahi kama member ya hii kamati kwamba imewekwa mbele ya bunge hili. Na nataka kuchukua nafasi kupongeza chairman na kupongeza members ya kamiti yetu ambaye wengi wameketi kwenye bunge adhuhuri ya leo. Ninafurahi sana mimi nikiwa vice chair ama nikiwa msaidizi mdogo wa chairman wetu. Ninaunga mkono na ninasema vile imefika mbeleni wajumbe wenzangu, ningependa sana tutilie maanane mambo ambayo inahusu wale watu wasiojiweza. Tunajua tuko na hawa kule nyumbani, wengine ni madada zetu, wengine ni mandugu zetu, wengine ni majirani, wengine tunaenda kanisa pamoja, na wengine ya hawa ni watu ambao pia wanaajibika katika familia zao na wanataka usaidizi. Utapata kwamba wengi hawajaweza kujiandikisha kwa vikundi, utapata wengi hawajaweza hata kupata habari kwamba kuna kazi imetangazwa mahali fulani. Kwa hivyo ninachukua hii nafasi kuomba wajumbe wenzangu kwamba tusimame imara na hawa, na ningependa kusema tutaanza na maofisi yetu. Ningeomba kwamba kama uko na ofisi ya serikali ama yako kibinafsi, tuwapatie nafasi kulingana na sheria ambaye tumeambiwa na chairman wetu. Kwa hivyo ninachukua hii nafasi kusema ni kazi yetu kama viongozi kutetea hawa watu. Tunaelewa kwamba hawajiwezi kwa njia moja ama nyingine, lakini hiyo haimaanishi hawatafanya kazi. Kwa hivyo ninachukua hii nafasi kuwaomba wajumbe wenzangu kwamba wapatie nafasi kwa mambo ya basari, wapatie nafasi katika maofisi yao. Tuangalie itakapokuja hapa kuongelewa, sisi wote tutatazama kama viongozi, kama wajumbe, chinzi vile tutawasaidia kule nyumbani. Kwa hayo machache Bwana Spika, ninaomba kuunga mkono mswada huu ambao imeletwa katika bunge hili. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana. Honorable members, I propose the question that this House adopts the committee. Let me take it again. Honorable members, I propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunities on the compliance of Article 54(2) of the Constitution regarding employment of persons with disabilities in public institutions, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 21st February 2024. The first bite goes to Honorable John Namoit, Turkana South. The Honorable John Namoit. In the absence of the Honorable John Namoit, second is the Honorable Harrison Kombe, Magarini.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia nafasi ya kuweza kuchangia taarifa ambayo imetoka kwa kamati ya uwiano. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hakika katika yale mashirika tulioweza kuwaita mbele ya kamati na tukakagua stakabadhi zao, tumepata kujionea kwamba kiwango kile cha watu wasiojiweza ama walemavu kilikuwa kiko chini ya wastani iliyokuwa inahitajika na iliyopendekezwa ndani ya katiba. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna haja, ulemavu si ugonjwa wala kuwa mlemavu haimaanishi kwamba huwezi kufanya kazi. Hivyo kuna haja ya kwamba nyanja zote tukapate kuwahusisha na kuwaajiri walemavu. Kisungumzia hivi, ningetaka kuwa mfano katika kamati yangu ya CDF nimeweza kujumuisha walemavu ndani, na pia vile vile hata kwa wale waajiriwa wa ofisi pia nimeweza kujumuisha walemavu. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimepata kuona mlemavu wakati mwingine akiwa katibu wa kudumu katika wizara husika wakati huo ambapo tulipokuwa na mafuriko sehemu za Bate katika sehemu yangu ya bunge ya Magarini, tuliweza kuona ya kwamba anahusika vilivyo na kuhakikisha ya kwamba wale wote ambao wameathirika wakati huo wameweza kuhamishwa na kupelekwa katika sehemu ambazo ni za sawa, na pia vile vile wameweza kupelekewa chakula kutoka kwa wizara yake. Mheshimiwa Spika, kusema ule ukweli na nikinukuu kwa lugha ile ya kigeni, disability is not inability. Uko uwezo wa kufanya vyema zaidi hata kuliko wale walio wazima, na pia kuwa mlemavu haijamaanisha ya kwamba wewe uwe ni mtu wa kubaguliwa. Katiba imekataa masuala hayo ya kubagua walemavu na kubagua mtu mwingine yeyote yule kwa sababu ya maumbile yake. Leo hii tuwazima wengine wetu, lakini haijamaanisha kwamba uzaliwavyo ndivyo unavyozeeka. Kwa mara nyingi tumepata kuona watu wakihusika kwa ajali na hivyo kupoteza maumbile yao na kuwa walemavu. Ningeuliza bunge hili likaweze kuunga mkono taarifa hii ili kwamba tukaweze kuwaweka mahali wanapostahili walemavu kama Wakenya wengine. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
The Honorable Wanjiku Muya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Indeed, I was waiting for this report. And first, I want to congratulate the committee. The report is very, very well done. It's a beautiful report, considering they even did an audit of 39 institutions, which can indicate how our country looks like. Honorable Speaker, I think the Act of 2003 is about to be repealed. In fact, it is in the process. And I see quite a number of beautiful points in this report. And therefore, I hope the chair and the committee will also be coming to the relevant committee to give input to improve the new act that is expected. Honorable Speaker, as this committee was being allowed it, I think it would only have been fair if they started by Parliament, because when you are auditing, it is also good if you could audit yourself. And as such, personally, I can say I have complied. I have 2 persons with disability in my constituency, not specifically in the CDF, because I know in NGCDF the law requires, but outside NGCDF, in the constituency office. And therefore, I ask the honorable members, the 290 of us and the women reps, to also audit themselves and see if they can create a position, 1 or 2. And if the country would move in that direction and the counties would also create equal opportunities, then we would be somewhere. I also want to urge the Honorable House of Senate to do a similar audit to the counties, because this is their mandate and this committee could not have audited the counties. I know the county of Uasin Gishu, I know the county of Kericho, which is rated very highly. And in fact, during the Governor Madago, he was rated the best county to have employed so many deaf persons in the county of Uasin Gishu. As we call the county governments in the rest part of the country, I ask the Senate to consider if they could do this audit, but before they do it, let us audit ourselves. Because, Honorable Speaker, we say the government, but we are the government. Before we audit the ministry, let's audit ourselves. However, Honorable Speaker, this report is based on census of 2019, which we all know it is disputed, and therefore the figures that are put here couldn't be real. We know the census in this country are after 10 years. But I may plead with the government, considering the very desperate situations that all of us have witnessed last year during the registration of Inua Jamii, when we could not register thousands of people from persons with disability because they didn't have registration numbers. I would ask if the government, now that they devolve the National Council to the counties, could review the numbers of these people and also consider to improve in funding the National Council, which is the body entitled in considering matters of the persons with disability. Honorable Speaker, 5% is a very small percentage for us to attain as a nation. If you read through the report, you find the nation of Switzerland as the best in the world to have considerably given the employment opportunity to these people. But I'm also happy that in East Africa, in our bloc, the state of Rwanda, which is our partner state, is also rated very highly to have considered this. Honorable Speaker, time and again, persons with disability have lived on donations as if they are not citizens, and they live waiting for whatever happens in their life. It's time that the government make deliberate move, consider them, fund them through the budget in the avenues that they are working with, like the National Council, the Social Security, and the Ministry of Labor, and consider them just like Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, there is, of course, a conversation of the caregivers today. We may consider to give persons with disability jobs, but in the event it is not possible, the caregivers can be given the jobs and they can work and provide the essentials to their loved ones, and that data can be put as serving the person with disability. I want to congratulate the Lake Victoria South Waterworks Development Agency for having been the highest out.
The Honorable James Jikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity to contribute to this. Mr. Speaker, this report is extremely important. It is looking at Article 54, and although it confines itself to 54.2, which is just basically about the employment, the 5% that is required for institutions to offer persons with disability. But Mr. Speaker, it actually needs to, and to some extent addresses the whole of 54. Mr. Speaker, there's no way we can attain the requirement of 54.2 if we do not look at the rest of 54, particularly B, which says access to educational institutions and facilities for persons with disability that are integrated into education system. Education is key to being employed. So there's no way you will think I'll get to 5 if you don't address education. If you look at C, Mr. Speaker, access to all places, public transport, and information. How can one programs to aid mobility. Now that includes schools, that includes working places, so that must be done. If you look at even public facilities like toilets, you must make sure that those are accessible. If you look at institutions of training, if there is no sign language, and I know when sign language became a national language, I remember that time during the process of the Constitution 2010, it is important, and only the media, particularly the television networks, actually have implemented this appropriately. I see it in most meetings. I don't know whether it's really working in schools. Mr. Speaker, we really need even to have braille for every person who is blind. If you look at the lifts that we have, sometimes people see talking lifts, they think it's just modern. Basically, that is a requirement. Some lifts even have braille. So people have not noticed. So all these are actually required. But it also indicates mainstreaming of disability in all institutions. Mr. Speaker, whatever we do, if all institutions do not realize and put in place and monitor the requirements of persons with disability, there is no way we'll achieve the employment that we are looking for. So, Mr. Speaker, I've looked at this report and the recommendations that it has put in place. They say within 3 months, all public institutions should review human resource policies to enhance representation of persons with disabilities. That can only happen if in the first place you have enabled, you have capacity built the persons with disabilities, you have given them the provisions that they require in the learning institutions way before that. So that's something. Within 6 months, in consultation with other stakeholders, are aimed at reviewing the Disability Act. In fact, that is extremely important. I know the Disability Act, there is an effort to review it. And so that must be done. But Mr. Speaker, I will summarize it that mainstreaming is extremely important for this. Registration, we have a proper process of registration of persons with.
The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I want to, on the very, very onset, stand to support this motion. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, disability is not inability, is not sickness. When you are disabled, doesn't mean you are unable. You can do quite a number of things, and it's not that because you are sick. You are just physically disabled, and that could be, as we have all witnessed in our lives, that's actually God's creation. God actually created people like that. I've, for example, in my constituency, hired 2 very disabled fellows, and I want to tell this house, these guys are very hardworking, very sharp. If you have anything, those are the fellows I normally sent out. And therefore, disability is not inability, it's not sickness. So you should be given equal opportunity to be able to work. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, again, there are people who are discriminative. And because somebody is disabled, he will maybe put on a wheelchair or something like that, they can't employ him. When this person can be able to work even better than an MD. And therefore, we should actually make this aware. People should be able to know that somebody, it doesn't matter if he's unable, but as long as he's actually able, and most of these people are very, very sharp. I have in my family one person who is actually disabled. And I can tell you, he has been doing so well as a teacher. And above all, his children are very sharp. In fact, 2 of his children are now, one is doing actually PhD. And The other one is doing other things and has been actually been able to get an opportunity to go to work in German. And that is, you look at the person, the father of this, you can't believe that he's a father. So most of it, that much as God has not given you the ability to do one or two things physically, but when it comes to brains, oh boy, I can tell you that these people are normally very sharp. So therefore, I think this motion has come at the right time, and we want to take up this opportunity and encourage that institutions, schools, and any other area that has got that kind of, like if you are doing construction, they should be able to have at least the construct a way where the inability to get to the place where other people are enjoying should be able to be provided, a ramp in the areas, in schools, so that sometimes I gave a contract to one of the contractors and was building a story building for the second school, and there was no provision for inability. I said, now, today, of course, you don't have one, but tomorrow, there'll be somebody who actually is not able to walk up to the first floor. And therefore, I told him, I said, you now have to construct a ramp at your own cost, because you can't have a story building without a ramp. So therefore, the motion has come at the right time, and therefore we should be able to assist those who are unable, and those who are not able to see. And again, we should be able to have institutions so that the sign languages are actually taught in some areas, so that those who are not able to see and whatever, they can be taught in those institutions. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to say this is a motion that has come at the right time, and I wholly support this motion. Thank you. The Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support the report by the Committee of National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity, which I am a member of the same committee. Honorable Speaker, first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our able leadership led by the Chair, Yusuf Adan, and our Vice, Lisa Chelule, on the very comprehensive report from the committee. And Honorable Speaker, first of all, I'd just like to point out some of the observations that we made while we were interviewing some of the institutions, the public institutions that we did interview. And Honorable Speaker, considering the fact that our Constitution in Article 54, subsection 2, it has been very clearly indicated that the ideal percentage for persons with disability in public institutions should be 5%. But Honorable Speaker, out of the 39 institutions that we did interview, actually 24 fell short of that compliance. That is a total of 61% of those interviewed, which gives you an average of 2.1% of the persons with disability who are employed in our public institutions. Honorable Speaker, one of the things that we noticed was lacking is lack of an adequate and comprehensive policy in these institutions that clearly laid out the requirements for them to be able to have persons with disability there. The other issue was on the limited outreach, because each and every institution that we got an opportunity to interview were telling us that they were not having enough people who were persons with disability interviewing or coming forward to say that they wanted these particular jobs. Honorable Speaker, the other issue also that we noticed was the issue of staff training, lack of adequate number of staff who actually had adequate training on sign language or how to handle persons with disability. And Honorable Speaker, when you look at the report and notice some of the recommendations you made, the unique thing about our report is that not only did we make recommendations, but that we also gave a timeline for each and every recommendation that we made as a committee. For instance, Honorable Speaker, we indicated very clearly that we want to ensure that in 3 months, public institutions have human resource policies that directly spoke about and had issues in reference to persons with disability. Honorable Speaker, Another recommendation that we did make to all these institutions was that we asked them if they had even taken into consideration speaking to members of parliament or constituency offices, because we noted very clearly that members of parliament in their offices, they do have database of persons with disability within their constituencies. And one of the recommendations we made to the NCPWD was that they should check their database once more, compare notes with members of parliament to ensure that their database is actually updated to have a reflection of all the 290 constituencies and ensure they do have persons with disability in their records. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, that we recommended was the proactive registration of the database and updating of the same. And this we recommended as a committee that we want it done in 3 months. So therefore, which means that we will check again with the NCPWD to ensure that their records are up to date. Honorable Speaker, another recommendation that we strongly gave consideration was on the public institutions' collaboration with health insurance. Because one of the things that came up was that the health insurance coverage fund did not take into consideration how expensive it is for persons with disability to acquire their mobility tools like wheelchairs, like crutches, because this in most insurance funds is not covered. And finally, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I just want to encourage the persons with disability who are out there, because we have had so many success stories of persons with disability who have actually confirmed that disability is not inability. And therefore, mine is just to urge them to ensure that they're actually registered with the National Council for Persons with Disability, and that even for our fellow members of parliament who are here, to ensure that they have updated their records of persons with disability within their constituency.
Laws of this country. Honorable Speaker, 1 and 2 provides very clearly the rights of persons with disability. Honorable Speaker, if you read Article 54(1), it says a person with disability is entitled to. Chair, the word entitled means mandatory. Is entitled to certain constitutional rights. One of them being access to educational institutions and facilities that are integrated into the society. And Speaker, even before the issue of employment, there is a challenge in access to educational institutions by persons living with disabilities. And Speaker, we need to relook and ensure that our institutions handling persons with disabilities and the children are properly equipped and with facilities that will assist those children get education. Honorable Speaker, further, if you read 54(1)(2)(1)(c), it says they are entitled to reasonable access to all places of public and as well as transport. Honorable Speaker, we must align even our public institutions so that those living with disabilities are able to access those particular institutions. Honorable Speaker, Article 54(2), the subject of this debate, provides very clearly that PWDs shall, that the state shall, Honorable Speaker, it is not a suggestion, it is mandatory, that they shall ensure the progressive implementation of the principle that at least, Honorable Speaker, at least 5% 5% of members of public in elective and appointive positions is entitled to PWDs. Honorable Speaker, I have read the report with that particular constitutional principle. Honorable Speaker, it means that the remainder of 2.9%, we must take comprehensive steps as a house, as a country, so that we can be able to comply with this particular provision. Honorable Speaker, it is shameful that out of the 39 sampled public institution, only one institution, that is a Lake Basin Development Authority, has been able to comply with the 5% threshold. Honorable Speaker, we must, as a country, be able to take care of these people. Honorable Speaker, under the PWD Act of 2003, we must be able to relook, because that is the legislation that provides very clearly that for the fundamental rights of persons living with disability. Honorable Speaker, for that reason, we must be able to amend that particular provision, that particular Act of Parliament. We must be able to amend it so that we align it with Article 54(2) of the Constitution and have these rights of persons living with disabilities clearly outlined and anchored in that particular legal provision. Honorable Speaker, finally, we need a report for this House, a comprehensive report by this particular committee on all public institutions outlining the compliance of the minimum threshold of at least 5%. Honorable Speaker, if that report is brought before this House, then it will inform amendments to the apparent act, that is the National Council for Persons Living with Disabilities Act. Honorable Speaker, I submit.
Thank you very much, Member for Marakwet West. The Honorable Njeri Maina, Member for Kirinyaga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support and commend the committee for this report. And Honorable Speaker, before I proceed, allow me to just highlight that it is not that 2.1% of institutions have complied. It is only, the compliance level is only at 2.1%. The Constitution, Article 54(2) is very clear. It says at the very least. That means that the threshold we should be looking at should be more than 5%. It is very disappointing that of the 39 institutions, public institutions for that matter, Honorable Speaker, that the committee visited, only one had fully complied with the requirement of not less than 5%. Honorable Speaker, Article 27 of the Constitution in its entirety and in specific Clause 4 indicates that no person should suffer any discrimination because they are differently abled. Honorable Speaker, we have a legislation in place. We have the policy of various relevant ministries in place, but we fail at implementation. Honorable Speaker, it is the same thing that happens to the 30% for AGPO that is supposed to be set aside for women, PWDs, and the youth to access opportunities from public and private institutions. And it is quite a disappointing thing, Honorable Speaker. We cannot only have the law in academia. The law was supposed, or rather the intention of the drafters was for the Constitution of 2010 to be wholly implemented. Honorable Speaker, we must also ask ourselves, do we have performance indicators? Do we have evaluation mechanisms to ensure that once we have these policies in place, that they're actually being complied to? Honorable Speaker, it is also very disappointing to note that oftentimes the society looks at differently abled persons as bothersome, as if they're too needy. Honorable Speaker, I had the privilege of having a discussion at the People's Dialogue Festival with representatives of persons living with disability. And firsthand, you can tell that they are disadvantaged from the very dint that they were created that way, or sometimes perhaps along the way in life they had accidents. And it is a very unfortunate situation that we must also focus on mainstreaming implementation in even the private sector. Most of these institutions, they lack the basic infrastructure, mere basic infrastructure to ensure that differently abled persons have access to these facilities, even health facilities, despite the fact that there is law in place and the 203 Act stipulates that differently abled persons must be facilitated with infrastructure to ensure that they access certain facilities. It is therefore the right time, and I have seen that the committee has recommended implementation within 3 months. Of course, perhaps they can give some more time for implementation and also follow up. I want to request the committee to follow up on whether it has actually been implemented, because we do not even need any subsidiary legislation. The law and the constitution is very clear. That means that those institutions are not compliant with the constitution of 2010. So, as a house, we must ensure that we fully implement the 2010 constitutions and support persons living with disability. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Gideon Mulyungi, member for Mwingi Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this report from the National Coalition and Equal Opportunities. And I want to start by congratulating the chair and the committee. The chair is my neighbor. He passes through my constituency to his home, and I know he's a very able man. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I listened to him speaking, and as a former vice chair of that committee, I understand what he was talking about, and I support the contents of his document in total. Madam Speaker, the Constitution provides that all public institutions must comply with appointment of persons with disabilities up to 5%. And from the report that has been tabled, it is very clear that majority of the institutions in Kenya do not comply. Only one out of those which were interviewed complied. Madam Speaker, people living with disabilities are normally disadvantaged, and anybody, anytime, whether born or thereafter, can be disabled. You recall, Madam Speaker, the former president of Kenya, President Mwai Kibaki, became the president of Kenya on a wheelchair. And that was the epitome of compliance of this constitutional requirement. And I think that is why President Mwai Kibaki was the founder of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the spirit of the Constitution 54(2) is that this provision should be complied with progressively over time. And since we promulgated the Constitution, 2010 is now well over 10 years, 14 years. And in my view, all the institutions within 14 years ought to have complied with this provision. And therefore, I want to blow on this committee to crack the whip to ensure that all the government institutions comply with this provision. Madam Speaker, you realize that in most of the public buildings and even public places, PWDs are normally not provided for. You'll find buildings with no ramp access. You'll find even places where even toilets, there are no provisions for toilets to assist the disabled. Even in restaurants, there is no provision where a disabled person will enjoy themselves in a restaurant, even in bars and clubs. There is no provision, and therefore, Madam Speaker, I agree totally with the recommendations of this committee that we should revise the law to ensure compliance by all the institutions to make it mandatory, so that if you don't, you have broken the law. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I support. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Jackson Lemontare, member for Samburu East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to support this report. Madam Speaker, just as other speakers have said, disability is not inability. And Madam Speaker, we have the Constitution and there is the Act. What we are lacking, Madam Speaker, is the compliance of the same or implementation. Because at this time, Madam Speaker, we are still talking of these people with disability not able to access some places. And I think, Madam Speaker, this disability, it is very important for us to know as a country. In Kenya, there are a lot of issues even when it comes to employment. And we are talking about the employment of disability people, and even it is reported, Mr. Speaker, that even the employment of people in some sectors is only very few community members are employed. So it is very important for us, first of all, Mr. Speaker, barriers should be removed so that the disabled can access almost all the services, Mr. Speaker. And I think, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to employment of disabled people, the employers have sometimes doubt about their performance, and people still have a lot of negativity towards the disabled people. And I think it is our high time as a country to implement fully the Constitution and even the Act, Mr. Speaker. It does not help the disabled people to have laws written on paper, but when it comes to implementation, that is where we lack. And I think everybody should be compliant with the labor laws, Mr. Speaker. And maybe even us as members of parliament, the 290 constituencies and offices of women representatives, we must start from there, that each and every member of parliament should be able to employ these disabled people in our offices. Because if maybe we are here talking about the same, but what have we done as members of parliament? Mr. Speaker, It defeats logic. Maybe if us as members of parliament, we may not have fulfilled that. And what is rightfully for the disabled people, Mr. Speaker, should be given to them. And Mr. Speaker, even when it comes to contracts and this work which are done by people, the percentage left there is very small for the disabled people, and again they are not given that. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a high time we have to implement the Constitution, comply with the article concerning the disabled, and I think it will be good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Shakil Shabir.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I support the report in the way that they have presented it. However, I have some concerns in respect of the language they have used towards their recommendations. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very clear. It says 5% of all employment on all public institutions must be the absolute minimum. The committee carried out an inquiry, but the main objective of the inquiry was to assess the ethnic and diversity representation within public institutions, specifically PWD, persons with disability. It is absolutely clear that there are they came up with the 2.1% of those institutions that they inquired, not of all institutions. I would have required now for a list of all institutions of public institutions, those who have not met that 5%, because that is an offense. The committee says public institutions should review their public human resources policies within 3 months. There isn't should, must. That within 6 months the NCPD should initiate, of course, amendment of the Disability Act, I agreed. Within 6 months, public institutions should formulate and put into effect comprehensive disability mainstreaming policies. These are not should. That is why I disagree with the report in its recommendation with the word should be replaced with must. I would also like, but I mean it's a great report. It's done a lot of work, but that's my only point of that I do not agree with. This is economic injustice, and economic injustice to the disabled, PWDs, is against the Constitution of this country. It's one of the pillars of Constitution, economic injustice. If they are not being given their right of a minimum of 5%, it's an economic injustice. It's against the Constitution. And I feel that this report must be more firm in its recommendations. Mr. Speaker, sir, equality and equity is not the same. Equity demands a minimum of 5%. Equality would ask for difference. There is, Mr. Speaker, also a feeling that it's something that I've seen, that we do not, as members of parliament, give enough support to our members, our PWD, in our constituencies. And I would want to make sure that we also, our constituencies also should be audited. A report should be given by our constituencies, telling the Speaker how many PWDs we have. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is another association of persons with disabilities who get funded directly from the office of the President. NCPWD gets funded from the budget. But this other one is headed by a great lady, Christina Pratt. But they have much more money than the other one. And I would like to point out today that I think these two institutions must be amalgamated, and they're doing the same thing, and they should be put together, and we have a joint approach. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Maina Madenge.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to this report. I am a member of the National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity Committee. Honorable Speaker, one of the realizations that this committee came to is that it is not sufficient for the Constitution to provide for rights for Kenyans to enjoy those rights. And Honorable Speaker, going by the inquiry and the contact that we've had with the sagas and ministries, including the Public Service Commission, it is a sad state of affairs in terms of how we treat our persons living with disabilities when it comes to employment. Honorable Speaker, if this report had been more inclusive in terms of the access to the 30% reservations for persons living with disability, then we begin to see how unfair and unjust we are as a nation. Honorable Speaker, in a report by the Public Service Commission published in the year 2014, across the nation, the employment for persons living with disabilities was less than 1%. At this point in time, 10 years down the line, 14 years of implementing the new constitution, we have only had a 1.1% rise. And therefore, if we extrapolate this, we begin to see that it will take us close to 50 years for the persons living with disability at this rate to realize their allocation of 5%. This is untenable. Most of the sagas, in an attempt to address the issue of persons living with disabilities, only go as far as having a disability mainstreaming committee within the executive of the saga. However, these committees have little tangible action to show. Honorable Speaker, violation of our Constitution must have consequences. And therefore, I'm urging this House to actually go a step further and recommend that the violation of the rights of persons living with disability by public and state officers should be classified as a gross violation of the Constitution, with the potential of having CEOs dismissed on account of denying persons living with disability their chances. Honorable Speaker, when we look at training opportunities for skills for persons living with disability, it is a national shame. We visited one institution that I believe may be the only dedicated institution for offering secondary education to persons living with disability. And they had a gym that had nothing other than the walls. That institution has been left to rely on companies that have corporate social responsibilities because we have no dedicated funding for those programs. When we go to teachers who have been trained in special education, they have been frustrated in terms of promotions when TSC does promotions. Honorable Speaker, we must, as a nation, take reasonable action towards disability mainstreaming and undertake deliberate affirmative action in assisting our brothers and sisters who are in this state. In ending, Honorable Speaker, the medical care for persons living with disabilities sometimes requires supplements that are very costly. It will be necessary for this House to consider exempting supplements that are used by persons living with disabilities from tax. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support the report.
The Honorable Millie Odhiambo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to congratulate and thank the committee for the report. Mr. Speaker, as a person who has worked on the issues of equality, equity, and inclusion over the years, I think the report of the committee is timely. Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, the challenge is not the issue of a lack of a legislative framework. The issue is on implementation. The Constitution is very clear, as is indicated in the committee report, and it's just a question of compliance to Article 54(2) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very clear about the number of people or the percentage of persons with disability that should be employed in government entities. And Mr. Speaker, because of our entrenched culture of impunity, we think that we actually pass laws for the sake of passing laws. And because of that, we are not committed to ensuring that we actually give effect to the laws that we have passed. And I want to challenge the Committee on Implementation that other than the report that has been brought by the specific committees, they should also follow up and ensure that when we pass laws, that the laws are actually implemented. Mr. Speaker, it's not even just this one. There's even a law that I passed here on Victim Protection Act, which is an excellent piece of legislation. And we have refused to operationalize that act. So the challenge that we're having as a country is the culture of impunity and non-implementation of laws. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to say much about persons with disability because all of us know the challenges that they go through. I just want to challenge the committee that beyond the issue of the numbers that are employed or the ones that are not employed according to the Constitution, I also would like the committee to also do an audit of public buildings or infrastructure and how friendly they are to persons with disability. One of the other issues, Mr. Speaker, that I think we need to also look at very keenly is very clear, to be very clear and to have disaggregated data on the kinds of disability and how widespread they are even by gender. And the reason is because persons with disability who are women tend to face even greater challenges than persons of disability who are male. And I'll give an example of there's a family in my constituency in Bitter Point area around Milimani, of a woman whose husband had a disability. And the woman herself has children with 5 children with severe disabilities. And I don't even want to call them children because they are adults actually. And you find that these persons with severe disabilities are raped, they have children, nobody can take care of them. And Mr. Speaker, one of the things I would want to challenge the committee to do is to recommend for the government to set up an institution that can fully take care of cases of severe disabilities. Because when you leave an individual to be the one taking care of persons with severe disabilities, then you are affecting the mental health of that person. Very recently, I think many of us saw a young lady who went viral because she was complaining that she has a mother who is suffering schizophrenia and she has a brother who has a severe disability. She has to take care of the mother with a mental challenge, she has to take care of the brother.
And Mr. Speaker, this lady was appealing and she was saying she's appointed, she was about to commit suicide. Why should we commit suicide when we can actually put resources as a country to help in such situations? Mr. Speaker, I would want to encourage the committee to explore the institutionalization that is covered by the government of persons with severe disabilities and persons that have lasting mental challenges, because it's too much a strain on the persons who are their caregivers. Mr. Speaker, my time is up, but otherwise I want to thank the committee for a good report.
Very well. The Honorable Moses Injendi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I arise also to support this motion, and particularly Honorable MP Yusuf for this particular report. Mr. Speaker, I wish to start by highlighting what the article says. The state shall ensure, Article 54(2), the state shall ensure the progressive implementation of the principle that at least 5% of the members of the public, elective and appointed bodies are persons with disability. Speaker, we may want to really talk harshly against these institutions, but from where I'm sitting and reading this, you see, it talks of progressive, and therefore it becomes a challenge to anyone even to sue them, because if you are to sue any person, then he quotes this, which talks of progressive. Progressive means what? How long? So I would that maybe the committee may consider coming up with an act of parliament which actually can stipulate up to what point this should be implemented to get 5%. Speaker, the other challenge we have in the country is when we're talking of employment of these persons. There are some jobs that are very specific. They want someone who is a professor, someone who has a master's, someone who has a specific qualification. Speaker, we want to face the matter practically. Do we have institutions in the country that train or can train persons of disability to this particular level? And if there are, how many are they? Do we have sufficient teachers in the country? Speaker, this is a matter that the country or a parliament or the committee should look at deeply. It's not as it is at face value. We are aware that most families have persons with disability, but this person, even accessing education, is a challenge. The current CBC is talking of integrated kind of education in our schools, where persons of disability can also join. Speaker, I'm aware of families that are not willing even to take their children to such schools because disability in our country, in our community, is a shame. It's a curse. And therefore, taking them to school where other normal children are is a challenge. And even those children, when they are there, those who are very normal, they keep off these particular pupils. So even if you talk of employment, do we have these particular persons having necessary qualifications for employment? No, it's not there. Do we have these institutions that have to train them? They are not there. So Sheikh Yusuf, it's not only a matter of recommending those timelines, but it's a whole process to do with also educational system. Speaker, I've been wondering, when it comes to the forces in this country, that's KDF, police, prisons, NYS, how come when they advertise for these particular positions, you see, they do not consider persons with disability? And they're very clear about that if you have an eye problem, if you have one of the fingers, Mr. Speaker, look at it, just one finger being shot, you are not admitted into the forces. Is this a way of discrimination against persons with disability? What has a finger, losing just a small finger, one of it, what has it to do with performing the functions of a KDF officer or a police officer or a prison officer? So, Speaker, I can see my time is up. We have to come up with a specific law that has timelines. Because even as we are aware, some of the institutions, public institutions, do not have spaces or channels or a path that this person with disability can actually use to access offices. And this is just one way that demonstrates as a country, we are still very negative. We are not sensitive to persons with disability. Otherwise, I support and thank Sheikh Yusuf, Chairman of Coalition. Thank you.
The Honorable Martin Owino.
Mr. Speaker, the opportunity is much appreciated, and from the onset I want to say I support this bill, and I say kudos to my chair. Honorable Yusuf have been very passionate, and the whole team, in looking into issues of disabilities. Honorable Speaker, in the sense of 2019, 2.2% of Kenyans are found disabled. And that can be put in figure to 1 million. Could be more now, because a lot of population have surged. It is very interesting and saddening that the 39 samples we have of these companies did not meet the requirement. In other words, when we are looking at the public, the status of the compliance, and also cadres distributing across all departments, friendly environment measures, and experiences and challenges which goes with it, we found they were not compliant, and that is not acceptable. Mr. Speaker, disability occurs in many forms. It's a condition that limits people, either movement or mental or even activities, and it can occur to anybody. The irony is that even when you are employed fit as we are now, most of us, still you can get disability within the job, and then you are scaled down to be deployed without even any policy. You have had some of in the military stand down, and then you are put to be receptionists. You don't even know how to handle phones. So we were recommending policies that should make environment very conducive, training even people who are trained to train disability people, very clear, to avoid stigmatization, and also to make the environment where they operate very conducively. So, Mr. Speaker, we recommended some interventions which we are asking to be strictly implemented. One of them was strict human resource policies, because they're here and there. There's nothing very much tailored to this category of people in these companies. We were also asking that the strategy for recruitment should be changed. For example, if you put job advertisement in a local newspaper or in a website, you think they will see, or you use their organization, and you think they will be alerted that there's a job here. It doesn't work that way. And we suggested that the offices of the area members of parliament would be more convenient to send messages, because if you come to Ndiwa, you will find a file, a folder with all the people who are disabled with their capabilities. So if there's a job opening, you could easily be alerted and apply. Mr. Speaker, we are also saying that we should be getting regular reports. And Chair, I think after changing the standing order, we can implement this 3 months report, so that we know these anomalies which we got during these interrogations, there is improvement. They are employing more. They are availing more tenders to disabled, because sometimes we wait for 1 year to lapse and then we have nothing. Lastly, I want to say that people living with disability are central to social and economical development, and any discrimination will even increase poverty and pressure to the family, leave alone the person living with a disability. So this social exclusivity should be stopped. And I think, Chair, we need to do more on this. We just did 39, but there are so many companies out there that are not complying. So with that, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hope we'll continue to interrogate more. Thank you.
Very well. Now then, Speaker's prerogative, the Honorable Rose Museo.
Put your card.
Oh, thank you. Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipatia nafasi hii ili nikaweze kuchangia katika ripoti hii. Namshukuru sana mwenyekiti ambaye ameweza kuleta ripoti hii ya juu ya watu ambao wana changamoto ama kwa jina lingine tunasema walio na ulemavu. Ripoti hii imekuja kwa wakati wake. Niseme ya kwamba sisi kama wengi wa Kenya, wananchi wa Kenya, ni kwamba jambo hili hatulizingatii sana, na kwamba ajira kupatia watu ambao walio na ulemavu imekuwa ni shida kubwa. Ni kwamba tunapoangalia tunaona kwamba hawawezi, na pia ni wachache ambao wamesoma na kupata umaarufu wa kazi ambao wanaweza kuandikwa. Kwa hiyo napata kwamba kamati hii ningeomba ikaweze kuangalia sana juu ya watoto hawa kuanzia mwanzo pale shule. Unakuta kwamba wale ambao wamesoma ni wale ambao wametoka katika familia zina uwezo, lakini ukiwa mlemavu na umetoka katika familia ambayo haina mapato vizuri ama kuna umaskini fulani, unakuta kwamba hata wewe kuenda shule ni shida, ama kwenda shule ya upili pia inakuwa ni shida. Kwa hivyo wanazidi kukaa nyumbani na kukosa kazi. Sheria zipo ambazo zimetungwa na ziko ambazo zina mwelekezo ya kwamba walio na ulemavu wakaweze kusaidika na kuandikwa, lakini nakuta kwamba hatufuatilii. Ingekuwa ni vyema paweze kuwa na sheria kwamba hakuna ofisi nafaa kuendelea za kiserikali zisizo ambazo pia si za kiserikali, ya kwamba wakaweze kuambiwa ni lazima paweze kuwa na mtu mmoja ambaye pia ni mlemavu ambaye yuko pale kazini. Na ulemavu si kidole peke yake. Unaweza kuta kwamba nasema tumeweka mtu mlemavu lakini ana kidole kimekatika. Pana, tunataka kuona ulemavu kabisa ambao pia wamepatiwa nafasi ili tukaweze kuwaingiza ndani ya kazi, ya kwamba tukaweze kuwa na watu wa kwenda round maofisini kuangalia kama sheria hii imeweza kutekelezwa. Niseme ninapoendelea kuunga mkono ripoti hii, niseme ya kwamba kulikuwa zamani na social workers ama wafanyikazi wa kiserikali walikuwa wanatembelea nyumba kwa nyumba kuangalia watoto walio na ulemavu, lakini jambo hili ni kama lilikaja likaisha, na wengi unakuta kwamba wazazi wengi watoto wao hawapeleki shule kwa sababu ya kile Kiingereza wanakiita stigma, ama kwa sababu wanaogopa ya kwamba ni kama laana fulani ndio maana kuna ulemavu. Ulemavu ni jambo ambalo linafaa kuzingatiwa sana Kenya. Ndio tuone ya kwamba walemavu hawa wamepata nafasi. Nikiwa katika ofisi yangu, Bwana Spika, kesi nyingi ambazo ninapata za ubakaji ya watoto, wengi ni walemavu. Wengi ambao ni walemavu sasa wameanza kuingiliwa, kwa maana hawawezi kukimbia, hawawezi kufanya lolote. Unapata kwamba wanaume wachokozi wanakuja kulemea wale wasichana wa kike, watoto wa kike walemavu, na inakuwa kwamba security yao ningeomba pia ingeweza kuangaliwa na kuangaliwa ni jinsi gani wanaweza kusaidika. Otherwise mimi nasema kwamba ninaunga mkono ripoti hiyo, na jambo hilo linafaa kuangaliwa kwa dharura kabisa, jinsi ambavyo tunaweza kuwasaidia walio na ulemavu. Mimi ni mtu ambaye nilikuwa natembea vizuri, lakini leo niko na ulemavu. Kwa hivyo naelewa changamoto ya kuwa unapotembea ukiwa mzuri na ukiwa na ulemavu. Ni jambo ambalo lina shida sana, na naomba kwamba watu hawa wakaangaliwe. Pia usajili wao ukaangaliwa, maana wengi nakuta kwamba wanatafuta kupata ile kadi ya ulemavu, inakuwa pia ni shida kuipata. Tafadhali kamati yasema asante kwa hiyo ripoti. Thank you.
The Honorable Francis Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I rise to support this very comprehensive report, Mr. Speaker. But on the onset, I would like to thank the committee for an excellent report which they have brought to this House. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that this report is a tip of the iceberg. And we have a lot of things going out there. Mr. Speaker, I sit in the PIC, Public Investments Committee. And Mr. Speaker, we have been doing some audit in the universities, the TVET institutions, and Mr. Speaker, I want to say here that on this issue of PWDs, these institutions have failed very miserably. And Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that this committee have brought out these issues. Mr. Speaker, as said by my colleagues, our constitution is very clear. Article 54(2) is very clear. The laws of this country are very clear. The act which deals with specifically on disabilities is also very clear. I think, Chair, I want to support, Mr. Speaker, that the issue here is mainly lack of compliance and enforcement of the existing laws. And Mr. Speaker, I want to request the committee which has done a very good job to look again, let us re-examine the existing laws. Bring these amendments to the House so that we can be able to discuss these issues and take appropriate action in terms of legislation. And Mr. Speaker, I want this House to take this role seriously. And let's make sure that those people who are violating these laws, who are not abiding by the Constitution, are given punitive actions which can make them not to forget in their lives. Mr. Speaker, the issue of procurement, the law on procurement is very clear. It talks about giving some specific percentage to these people who are living with disabilities. But how many comply with this act? Chair, we need to look at ourselves. Even as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how many of us are complying to this rule, with this law. Because really it says that of all the procurement, of all the tenders in the entire country, we must give specific percentage to people living with disabilities. And the Chair, the Speaker, I want to say I support this report. In my constituency, Mr. Speaker, I have carried out assessment of people living with disabilities in my constituency. And I managed to get 1,084 people living with disabilities. What I am now doing, Mr. Speaker, is to look for how best we can assist. Because unless you know the extent to which they are disabled and what they really require in their life, is very difficult to assist. So, Chair, as an MP of South, I am committed to making sure that what the chairman has brought up here, I support in my as a starting point. So, Mr. Speaker, this report I fully support, and I want to thank the chair and this committee for doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Jackson Kosgei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to say I support the report by the Committee on the National Cohesion and Equal Opportunities by my friend, the chairperson, Honorable Yusuf Adan Haji. Thank you for the good work. Well done. Thank you for being bold to sample organizations and institutions of government that have not demonstrated their response to the demands by the law in all facets as given by our Constitution. It is a shame that in that sample, over 99% of the institutions representing other government sagas and agencies have not been able to fulfill the demand of the law in meeting the rights for persons with disability. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to quote from Mahatma Gandhi in some of his sayings. This was an Indian philosopher and who is the founder of the modern day India. He said these words, and I quote, that the true source of rights is duty. If we all discharge our duties, rights will not be far to seek. Mr. Speaker, if we do not implement, and I draw my attention to the recommendation given by the committee, and I think I support every part of it up to number 7, the way it is. Allow me to highlight my support by paying attention to number 1, number 2, and 5. Mr. Speaker, that institutions that really would like to practice a secret, we call it in management, for a bureaucratic disentitlement and discrimination, it is a silent policy that the disadvantaged people and people who are vulnerable in institution are silently disentitled of the rights they have in an organization if public institutions cannot pay attention in their policies, and especially the human resource instruments. The second thing that I have seen from their recommendation, Mr. Speaker, and I support, is that we need to strengthen organizations, and especially the National Council for Persons Living with Disabilities, whose bill is due for a review, and it is about to come into this House, and because it has been taken over to become a government bill, I wish to appeal to the leader of majority to hasten to bring that bill to the House so that we can review it, amend it, make sure that the gaps that exist in its implementation will serve as a shield. It is not enough to feel that we are entitled. It should go beyond and make sure that the law is responsive enough. I also agree that in the depoling of this particular report, it should be implemented as recommended by the committee. With this, Mr. Speaker, I support the report, and thank you again, the committee, for the good work under your leadership, Yusuf, as a chair. Thank you so much. And we support it. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Kathambi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the time you have given me to support this fantastic report by the Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity, which is led by
Honorable Yusuf and Lisa Chelule, my women rep from Nakuru County. Chair, the first thing I am appreciating the report is because most of the times we have talked about other kinds of groups of these people, and other times we really forget to talk about the people living with disability. To congratulate the team so much because of the inquiry itself, that surely, Mr. Speaker, this is the high time the people with disabilities must get fair representations in all the public institutions. And Mr. Speaker, when I was going through the report, I also found that when the committee was doing the inquiry in relation with the representation of the people living with disability, that to some extent they found the response of people saying that most of the times when there's job applications, the people living with disability sometimes don't apply. Therefore, I think it's also a responsibility for us as leaders to ensure that when there's also positions in different institutions, we do civic education. We also make it visible for them to know that there are some positions in different areas so that they can apply. Therefore, for the people living with disabilities, most of the times, the Speaker, they have been forgotten. And I thought if actually we can follow this report and also the committee to make sure that we have not only talked and supported it, they follow it to details, then it will really give us a good result. Another thing I noted, Mr. Speaker, I've realized most of the people living with disabilities, if they can be given a chance, they can really perform. In my constituency, which is Joyo, I have employed people living with disability, and they are doing great work. I still have someone representing the CDF as a committee member of a certain ward. But actually, when we go and see the kind of the project which are supervised by him, you really get impressed. Therefore, being disabled does not mean that you are not able to do. Even I would be challenging also our forces, even when there are some recruitments. They can also think of a way they can also attract. These people can be given some other works in respective offices. That we should not sideline the people living with disabilities, even in whichever force we have in this country. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I just want to support this report, which is really bringing the matters of people living with disability also as an important case, because most of the times we have talked in this house in support of our youth, our women, and sometimes when it comes to the matters of employment, we have sometimes not taken it seriously. Therefore, with this also, Mr. Speaker, we should not only talk about the public offices. Let it also be implemented by the private institutions. And let us also, through the chair and the vice chair of this committee, ensure that even the places of the place where they work, let us ensure that we have friendly structures to enable our people live well. Therefore, I stood purely to support this, and the committee, this was good work, and they put it and they push it to ensure that it is implemented, therefore physically. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time you have granted me.
Honorable Charles Were, Kasipul.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to indicate that I'm a member of the National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. I'm also a veteran there because even the last parliament, I served in the same committee. I want to allow my chair
Honorable Yusuf and the entire committee members for the executive job which they have done. I want also to indicate even the National Assembly has entered into expenses because we had several meetings in Nairobi, in Coastal region, and also in Western region, where we sampled different state corporations. I also want to indicate this, the essence of bringing the Act and the Constitution, because in the Republic of Kenya, wealth is normally distributed through employment, in which a consideration for disability was done. And object in this was to make sure that a good percentage, 5% as per the Article 54(2) of the Constitution, was brought in. You have noted that averagingly in 39 institutions, the average compliance, non-compliance is 2.1. And actually, if you go deep into each institution, you will just note things are not very, very good. Some are even at the percentage of 0.5%, while the Act stimulates very well a minimum of 5%. So in the institutional audit in these institutions, we really checked every part. And also I want to draw attention back, even in the last parliament, including Parliamentary Service Commission, which is our employer, has not even complied, even with the minimum of 5%. So we have a lot to do. And in our work, apart from the real employment which comes with the income, we also checked into the working conditions. And that's why we have also put some recommendation of each organization being given a time to prepare the HR manual as a policy so that we can make the improvement. During the institutional audit, we noted the person living with disability faces a number of challenges. That's why we put those recommendations, and we also have some observation. And actually some of the organizations we believed were not bringing good reports, because they say once the advertisement is done, the applicants became very few. I want to indicate that Kenya really has advanced in terms of academia, because even in lower level, you can notice there are several institutions of academia which are specialized for the persons living with disability. Even if you go to our institution of learning, our institution of learning, there are quite a number of disabled who are in different universities, and they graduate. So in our reports, we indicated that issue of employment, there are no lack of people living with disability with no qualifications. They are there, and we noted there was a lot of discrimination. That's why we brought up very, very good recommendations. The laws are there, the act are there. The only issue is to implement. And after passing of this report, I would request the team who are in charge.
The Honorable Ibrahim Sani. I saw him in the house, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the outset, I would wish to applaud the work of this committee for work well done. The report is very thorough insightful and comprehensive to that extent in regard to matters of inclusion of people with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, Article 54.2 expressly suggests talks on the empowerment of people with disability, more so on Section 2, which requires a progressive realization of mainstreaming people with disabilities in institutions, both institutions and electoral ones, Mr. Speaker. It suggests that it should be at least 5%. The benchmark is at least 5%. It doesn't mean it is 5%. You realize that for 14 years since the promulgation of our Constitution, there is nothing measurable in terms of attainment of the least 5%. The question is, what does progressive mean, and how has this at least 5% been measured in terms of the 14 years of the existence of the current Constitution, Mr. Speaker? The committee seriously delved and audited 39 institutions across the country. And it is worth recognizing that it is only the Lake Basin Authority that met the requisite requirements in law. It's good to applaud also that the Lake Basin stands out to be the only institution in the country that has met the legal threshold in compliance with the law on people living with disability. It's also worth to note that in terms of meeting the threshold or the progressive realization of mainstreaming people with disability across institutions, even across the institutions, the average stands at 2.1%. In the last Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, 2.2% of 0.9 million in Kenya are people with disability. That tells you that there is a sharp decline in people with disability relative to 2009 census. That casts serious issues on how our 2019 census has been conducted. With all the natural vagaries, with all the accidents, with all the problems, population increase, it doesn't actually, it's not logical to say that disability has decreased with time from 2009 to 2019. That indicts how the 2019 census has been conducted, that it goes against science, it goes against the basic logical things, that disability today has diminished 10 years from 2009. I think that gives more flesh to these people who are agitated that the 2019 census was not well conducted, more so the pastoralist communities of northern Kenya. Because it doesn't really augur well. It doesn't augur well that disability has diminished, that disability has decreased with population increase. Scientifically, rationally, logically, I don't know how fast it has come, Mr. Speaker. I had more points to make. One thing I wanted to suggest, that it is only the rural communities where we have majority of the people with disability, Mr. Speaker. This committee should know that the institutions that are required to at least absorb people with disabilities are not in the rural communities. And yet the majority of the people who are disabled.
The chair grants you an additional 2 minutes.
Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Speaker. What I wanted to say, the population of people with disability are in the rural communities, and our institutions are based in urban centers. So this report goes short of telling us that it is the institutions that should devolve to the rural communities so that more people are at least mainstream. The nature of disability is an issue, Mr. Speaker.
Continue.
The nature of disability is an issue, Mr. Speaker. People with mental illness, people who are mentally unwell, and wellness is an issue of concern globally today, cannot be mainstreamed or be given gainful employment, Mr. Speaker. So how should the government conduct itself moving forward? It's about capacity building, placing people who are disabled in jobs, and making sure that they are given capacity and soft skills more so that we can upscale their numbers with time, Mr. Speaker. What is more important, Mr. Speaker? We have the laws as we speak. We can't infinitely be making laws as a house. These laws must be implemented. Kenya has a problem with implementation of laws. These laws on disability is so comprehensive. If only we would have implemented them fully, we would have been better than we are today, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, I support.
The Honorable Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important report compiled by the National Cohesion Committee. And I have gone through the report and seen the attention they have given to the report, which has really touched on the lives of people living with disability. And because we have always been in this country and we know what happens in most of our countries, I mean African countries, people living with disability have suffered in the past in many ways. From the time of their birth or from the time they go through a challenge, maybe through accident, and maybe become disabled in one way or the other, they have been affected in different ways. Number one, educating people living with disability has not been easy. For those people living in urban areas where they have all the facilities they need, that may have been very easy. But for those people who live in rural areas, in the villages, where illiteracy level is quite high, where people don't value education, where people don't even have enough resources to send every child to school, when it comes to sharing and also giving priority, a child or people living with disability have always been disadvantaged. That means illiteracy level is quite high in especially rural areas. Again, as a result of that, we can also know very well that unemployment, because many of them don't even qualify, many of them have not even gone through proper education, unemployment is quite high. Again, poverty level among the people living with disability is quite high because they do not have a job employment that sustains them, or they cannot be able to create enough wealth because, as we know very well, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans work very hard. Others are farmers, others are pastoralists, others do some small businesses and earn their living. But people living with disability have always been disadvantaged because they do not have even people who support them in terms of their movement, and they don't have even those facilities that enable them to be effective in what they want to do. So poverty level among the people living with disability is quite high. Again, as we were growing up, I observed the stigma that is with the families and even with the people living with disability, because sometimes people see it as a burden or as a curse, and sometimes people even look at the people living with disability as different creatures, and sometimes their attention or the way they look at them, the way they treat them really is stigmatizing and making them feel bad about themselves. Again, in addition to that, the negative attitude in the villages that they receive. In urban areas, things are a little better because when you have money, you can take your child or anybody with a disability to a relevant institution. But in the villages, that is not the case. And in rural areas, these people suffer a lot because of the attitude that is put towards them. And that is why I agree with the recommendations that has been made and the recommendation that can really help these people so that proper data can be collected and these people living with disability or children living with disability can be sent to school, data to be collected for those who are educated so that when job opportunities come, we can give them relevant. Just 1 minute for me to finish.
Yeah, the chair gives you an additional 1 minute.
Thank you. So that they can be given job opportunities because currently most of them are not able to help themselves and they are left behind. Again, registration. Proper data to be taken and they be registered in the entire country because the number that
Honorable Member of Parliament for Kisauni.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa ya kuweza kuchangia ripoti hii ambayo ni ya muhimu sana. Lakini kabla hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nikupe katika tahadhari ili uwe nayo ni kwamba mimi nimeingia katika jumba hili hapa tangu saa 8 na dakika 20 na nimeweka kadi yangu imewaka ikiwa Mheshimiwa Spika alipitisha hapa kwamba watu watakuwa wakitumia dijitali wakitumia kadi zao. Ni vyema sana wale wanaohusika washughulikie hizi kwa sababu hatuwezi kuwa sisi tunakaa tunaona unyonge kumwona mwingine amekuja anazungumza na mimi nimekaa tangu saa 8 hapo.
Nidhamu Mheshimiwa Bedzimba.
Naam.
Kuna tatizo na hiyo kadi yako. Nafikiri ukitoka hapa uende ufanye mpango na wale watu wahusika iwe itengezwe vizuri. Maana jina lako halionyeshi hapa. Ndio nimekupa fursa order.
Nakushukuru.
Nimekupa fursa kwa sababu umekuja ukalalamikia speaker.
Nakushukuru. Ninajaribu kukuelezea pengine kuna wengine wana shida kama hiyo lakini
endelea na hoja hiyo tumemaliza.
Basi Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi pia nisimame hapa kuunga ripoti hii na niwashukuru kamati kwa kupanga mambo ya muhimu sana ambayo hii ni moja katika baraka ambazo Mwenyezi Mungu atawapatia neema kwa kukumbuka wale walemavu. Hata yule aliyeandika, aliyesikiza, na ndio maana nimetoka tangu saa 8 nimekaa hapa sitoki kwa sababu pia nipate neema hiyo ya kuwasaidia walemavu. Walemavu si mtu amejipendelea ama amependa kuwa na kasoro yoyote katika mwili. Na ulemavu unaweza mpata mtu yoyote. Unaweza mpata mtu yoyote yule ambaye yuko sahihi anajiona ni mzima, lakini sote sisi tunatumia vyombo vya moto, inaweza kupatikana na jambo lolote wakati wote na ukaingia katika shughuli hizo, ukaingia katika sekta hiyo. Kwa hivyo mimi ningeomba kwamba sheria zipo za kuwahifadhi, kuwasaidia, kuwalinda walemavu. Utekelezaji ndio una shida. Na ikiwa sasa sisi kila mmoja wetu aliapa kwa katiba kwamba atailinda, ataitetea, ikiwa mtu hatekelezi na hatimizi katiba anavyosema, anachosha ashtakiwe, unaapishwa kusudi ushtakiwe kama unakosea. Kwa hivyo ikiwa halmashauri za kiserikali haziajiri walemavu, yule mhusika pale lazima ashtakiwe kwamba yuko kinyume cha sheria kwa sababu aliapa kupitia kwa katiba. Na pia Mheshimiwa Spika, majengo yetu yawe na urafiki na walemavu kulingana na ulemavu wao. Na utaangalia Mheshimiwa Spika, hapa kwetu kwenyewe kuna shida hapa katika bunge. Lazima turekebishe ili tuwe urafiki na ulemavu. Leo Mheshimiwa Spika, nitakuelezea kwamba kulikuja hapa shule ya walemavu ambayo ilikuwa inaitwa Africa School of Blind. Ilikuja hapa leo, wakapanda ngazi ambayo ingekuwa na lifti ingekuwa ni urafiki kwao kufika juu. Na walipofika hapa, mmoja wao alizimia pale juu. Hapa kwa gallery, hapa kwa ukumbi huu.
ikabidi mpaka waletwe watu kutoka sehemu tofauti waje hapa kuja Red Cross waje wampe huduma ya kwanza. Ni vyema hata sisi katika bunge hili tuwe na wafanyikazi ambao wanaweza kuzungumza kwa ishara, wanaweza ishara ama kujua kuzungumza na viziwi, vipofu na ulemavu mwingine, ili kusudi sisi wenyewe pia tuwe katika hali ya kwamba tunasaidia ama tuko mbele katika kutekeleza ile katiba pia iliyosema hata PSC iweze kuajiri pia wafanyikazi hapa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tusipowaajiri hawa walemavu wanakuwa nje wanaomba, wanakaa barabarani wanaomba, si kupenda kwao, ni kwa sababu ya hali ya kwamba wamekataliwa, wametengwa. Kwa hivyo mimi ningesisitiza, kulingana na wakati wangu umekwisha, lakini ningesisitiza kwamba namshukuru mwenyekiti na kamati na sheria itekelezwe waweze kuajiriwa kulingana na percentage walioko katika katiba na zaidi, ili Mwenyezi Mungu pia tupe baraka katika taifa hili. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Mheshimiwa Christian Mbaka, Mheshimiwa wa Siaya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also want to add my voice to this. Kenya is a very difficult country in the sense that we tend to be very negative towards people living with disability. Disability is not inability, we know that, but we do not believe in that. We just simply say disability is not inability. Employment sector, I know getting a job, even if you're not a person living with disability, has been a very difficult process. It's very difficult to get jobs in this country, but it's worse for a person living with disability. I've just seen a message, a friend of mine who is a person with disability has just sent me a message and told me that getting a job for a person with disability is so difficult. It's like getting blood out of a stone. But he added to say that even getting married, if you're a male person with disability, is even very difficult. So that shows you how we really do not respect people with disability. We do not consider them in many other positions that they're capable of performing. Employment becomes very difficult, but even if the committee went through various institutions to establish how the number that have been employed, 2.1, is so below the belt, but it's also important to note what positions do they occupy once they are employed. A majority of them, cleaners, are they clerks? What positions do they hold? Are they CEOs? Are they directors? Let us also look at the status of those employment where they are normally employed at. So it is so difficult. But then, as most of us have observed, it is in the rural areas that we see a lot of people living with disability. And even though there are no jobs in the rural areas, I have seen many organizations employ or rather include people with disabilities only as committee members. They tend to be members of committee, which is really not a fully fledged job, but it is a membership where you are a committee member that makes decisions for a group of people, like maybe a member of a school board. That is where they tend to be included easily, or a member of CDF or National Government Affirmative Action Fund or Uwezo Fund. Those are the small little areas that they tend to be included, but in terms of real job, they do not get easily employed. There is also a case that I know of a lady who is living with disability, but she was expectant, and when she appeared for an interview, she was not taken, even though she qualified for the job. She had disability, and she was also pregnant. She never got a chance for that employment. So the problem we have, as I said earlier, is the very fact that we really do not give any opportunity to people living with disability because we are negative towards that. We stigmatize them and we do not include them in serious employment
We only give them positions where they're just members, where they can get some little allowance here and there, but we do not give them serious employment. It's an attitude of mind, and I think it's time that has come that we must begin to sensitize the community and employment firms to employ people living with disability. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I do support this report. Thank you.
The Honorable Beatrice, followed by the Honorable Yusuf Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to appreciate the committee and to thank them for a report that gives us an outlook on how we have dealt with our brothers and sisters who are in special needs or who are with different disabilities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, it is the role of government to ensure you create a friendly environment and integrate special equipment and design to empower individuals with disability, Mr. Speaker. And you realize that the Constitution, Article 27, entitles every person to equality and, more importantly, not to ensure there is no discrimination, both indirect or direct. And you find that that is why we have different laws and especially a policy that manages this sector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people living with disability come from different cultural backgrounds, educational, or even social backgrounds. And therefore, it is important for us to know that their equal opportunities goes beyond hiring. And when I say that, Mr. Speaker, is that you must ask yourself, it's not just about disability. We must understand that today in our lives, Mr. Speaker, we have people who walk in when you are okay, but in a few years something happens to you, and you find yourself in the same situation as those who are with disability. And therefore, it is also important that the government must have a clear policy for retention of job, especially when you acquire disability within an employment. And when I look at the report, Mr. Speaker, as I appreciate Article 54, which entitles persons with disabilities to accessibility to the different devices that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, I want to take myself to the report, and especially when we are talking of the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And I'm saying this is a very crucial commission, that if we don't have people with disability who can also come and account for their own data, then I'm wondering, how then do you work? Yet you must ensure. Yet it is where now we are saying protection of data. This is the most that we need to really, and I'm hoping, I look at the recommendations of the committee, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate that they've put in the timelines, and I'm hoping each institution will be bound to these timelines and be able to follow what the report is saying. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is no need for us to come and speak all this English we are speaking, Mr. Speaker. In other words, in brackets, I can say Kizungu mingi. But then we find ourselves again back into the same challenges we are facing, Mr. Speaker. The report says, within 6 months of the adoption of this report, the NCPWD, in consultation with other stakeholders, should come up with proposals aimed at reviewing the Persons with Disability Act. And this is very critical, Mr. Speaker, because today in the registration, you find many people living with disability headed for registration, but they will just be taken in circles. And so as I finalize, Mr. Speaker,
The most important thing I'm hoping all institutions of government and even the private sector can do for this country is to look at this report, look at the recommendations, and try their best to adopt and ensure that this report is implemented as needed. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
MP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I want first and foremost to take this opportunity to thank the chairman who brought this report, Yusuf Aden Haji, for being bold enough to come up with this kind of recommendation to help the most disadvantaged persons in the society. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, everyone here in this house must have either came across or have a disabled person in his society or his house, Mr. Speaker. It is very painful, Mr. Speaker, when we have those kind of people who need more care, who need more expenses, who need more care to be given in terms of resource and other things, Mr. Speaker, but nobody is caring about. It is unfortunate to see, Mr. Speaker, institutions of this country not following the law, Mr. Speaker. According to the report, Mr. Speaker, there is no institution that has been called or department that has been called by the committee and gave a report have complied with section or article 54 subsection 2 of the constitution of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is high time for this house to be bold enough and take the necessary action against anybody who is violating the constitution and the law of this land. Mr. Speaker, these people who are living with disability mostly need to be careful. They need to be given a lot of attention. They need extra care. They need extra resources. They are not like me and you who can go from one place to another to access services, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, it is important we give them jobs, we give them anything that they need so that their needs are taken care of. Mr. Speaker, the committee have done a great job. According to their findings, they have come up with several recommendations that must be implemented, Mr. Speaker. I support this motion, Mr. Speaker, and confirm my unsolicited support for these 7 recommendations, Mr. Speaker. For example, Mr. Speaker, recommendation number 2, within 6 months of the adoption of this report, NCPW should initiate the amendment of Persons with Disability Act to align with Article 54, Section 2 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this will cure a lot of ills in this country, Mr. Speaker. A lot of people will benefit if this is done. What I am requesting in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, we need to adapt and adapt this recommendation and support the committee's recommendation so that the people with disability are taken care of in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member of Parliament for West Pokot, followed by Madam Lillian Gogo. West Pokot MP Rael Kasiwai. She is not there. in that case, the opportunity goes to Lillian Gogo, and then we'll be followed by the MP for Elgeyo Marakwet.
I really thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity
to make my own contribution on behalf of Rango people on this matter of a report that has been brought by my brother,
point of order.
Yusuf.
Yes. Give him the mic.
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for honorable member to just speak and you get the MP from Marakwet who is not in the house?
Order.
And I read I'm the next, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
We need to vote the order.
Order. Honorable Kibiri, you are out of order. Proceed, Madam Gogo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I wonder what the Honorable Member, anything personal he has against me and the great people that I represent. And if he's feeling jealous, then he should talk well to the Speaker, but I should believe that I've been in this house also for a long time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I want to thank the committee for a good report. And on matters affecting people living with disability, Honorable Speaker, I'm passionate about it because people who live with disability, Honorable Speaker, are the same as people who do not live with disability. But it is important that when we are giving our report through the Speaker, I would advise the committee that we should also look at the component of people who live with severe disability, because this survey was done to find out how institutions comply with the constitutional provision that requires that people who live with disability be given a certain percentage when it comes to employment. But there are people also who may not be at the places of employment and they are living with severe disability, and as had earlier been elucidated with by one of the members, that the caregivers of such people should be treated as people who are also living with disability. Because there are people who are caregivers and the people that they take care of are not employable, and the people live with disability but at the same time they miss on chances of being employed by this probably the investigated institutions. So it's just a part of the recommendations, Honorable Speaker. But I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is high time that our institutions, even without being, that we just be human. That if you are leading an institution as a manager, as a managing director, as a CEO, or whatever title you hold in that institution, it is important, Honorable Speaker, that we think about our brothers and sisters as Kenyans, that somebody must not follow you up to find out if you have given, or if that institution, or if that board has given an opportunity for people who live with disability, Honorable Speaker. It should be invoked within our spirits, Honorable Speaker, that we take care of the vulnerable groups of our society, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the committee for doing a very good job, Honorable Speaker, but moving forward, Honorable Speaker, we should also get a system of punishing institutions, Honorable Speaker, who do not take care of people who live with disability, who do not give people who live with disability equal opportunity. We must have punitive measures, probably a form of a fine. Let us come up with a form of a fine as a way of forcing them into compliance. We just don't investigate and give a report, debate on it, but we should come up with stringent measures such that they should be able to be fined if they do not comply. And even having said that, such members who live with disability, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to advertisement of, I thank you for that opportunity. When it comes to advertisement, let us extend the time for application for people who live with disability, Honorable Speaker. I really thank you for that opportunity for Rango people. Thank you.
Honorable Caroline Miliche, the MP for Elgeyo Marakwet.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving the people of Elgeyo Marakwet this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I think the people with disability in this country are a very disadvantaged lot, Mr. Speaker. Many a times they struggle just to have their names in the books of this country. Many a times, Honorable Speaker, you find them also having to go an extra mile or to be more than a normal person to be recognized, Honorable Speaker. From the reports, and I wish to appreciate the committee for carrying out such a comprehensive report, and from the report combined, Honorable Speaker, you see out of the 39 counties, institutions sampled, only one. And I want actually to appreciate the Lake Basin Authority for ensuring that they go past the 5%. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, you find that in so many cases, when people are competing for opportunities, at times you find some employers being specific and saying that women, for example, are encouraged to apply. They should also be indicating that people with disability will be given a first priority. Or if indeed the Constitution 2010 Constitution envisaged that progressively we need to achieve, and all the institutions or all the employment bodies need to achieve 5%, I wonder, it is now 14 years down. How progressive, how many other years should we give for the progressive now to come to an end? So what should happen to those institutions that are still at an average of 2.1% should exclusively indicate when they are doing maybe job application that maybe they need, they normally indicate that we need to employ maybe 10 engineers. They should always indicate that 3 slots are reserved for people with disability, so that people with disability will also be encouraged to keep applying, because the competition of jobs in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, is too high, and sometimes some lots are discouraged, especially in some professions. When a person with disability applies for a profession, like there was an example of a partially blind teacher in Elgeyo Marakwet County. She even feared to go for interviews because what she...
Order, Honorable Caroline Miliche, I'm informed the time has come for the mover to reply. By the procedure of the House, that would mark the end of your contributions. Mover? Where is the mover?
Okay, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Before I move, I would like to donate 2 minutes to Makalu, 1 minute for her to finish. Those are 3, and 1 minute for her. Mover order. By the procedures of the House, you cannot donate to a member who has spoken. Okay. Okay. Then 2 minutes for Makalu. Makalu, I've already promised you 2 minutes. And Madam Mudoni, 1 minute. And Simini, 1 minute. Those are 4. And 1 minute is 6 minutes. Okay. 1.
Mover, did you donate 1 minute for each speaker or 2?
2 for Makalu, the rest 1.
Yes, Honorable Makalu, proceed.
Makalu, you requested earlier.
No, after them.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, for record purposes, my name is Makali Mulu, not Makaru, not Makau. It is Makali.
My apologies, Honorable Makali.
I do represent the good people of Kitui Central. I will be very brief, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want to start by thanking the chair and the committee for this excellent report. The report has excellent recommendations. Honorable Speaker, the weakest link in this house and implementation is our implementation committee. We make very good recommendations, they are never implemented. How I wish this time we get it right, Honorable Speaker, to make sure that this good recommendation of this committee will be implemented for the benefit of our people who are disabled. Honorable Speaker, all of us keep on saying disability is not inability, confirming that if we give them the chance, they can actually do their work, and they're times better than us who claim to be having no disability, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, what I would want to urge through your office and the office of the clerk, let's make sure that our implementation committee takes up these important recommendations and they're implemented. And Mr. Speaker, we must make sure these things are enforced. And where people don't enforce them, somebody must be punished for failure to enforce recommendations of this House. With these remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support the report. Thank you very much, Chair, for donating the minute for me.
Well, the next, is it Honorable?
Yeah. Next.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I too want to support this very important report by the Departmental Committee on Regional Cohesion and Integration, Honorable Speaker, and I want to say inclusion of the disability in all public institutions is not an option. Honorable Speaker, I know we have very many bills talking about the disability. We have made laws, but the implementation stage is what is the elephant in the house. So, Honorable Speaker, I support this report, and I say disabled people have equal rights and equal opportunities. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. I want to thank the committee for the good work they have done, because, Mr. Speaker, people with disabilities are very important in the society, and they should be given an opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, I have given two in my office, and the work they are doing is recommendable. And Mr. Speaker, for these recommendations for the committee, we need to take them serious. This is the time to implement the recommendation, because they are good recommendations, and we need to recognize people with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, even I worked in a building whereby the building is not a PWD friendly. And Mr. Speaker, this should be taken serious, because these people are important, and they given the opportunity, they can do a good job. Let the government give these people jobs and consider them in whatever they are doing.
Lastly, Honorable Karanga.
It is the Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to say that nobody applied to be born as a disabled person. And what measures the quality of our society and leadership is how we treat people who live with disabilities and those disadvantaged people. So, and this motion is about inclusion. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the idea of having the people living with disabilities included in the full total compliance with Article 54, subsection 2 of the Constitution of Kenya. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to support this motion. Clearly, you know, disability is not inability. Most of these disabled are our brothers and sisters out there. I support this motion because these people, they take their time to look for these jobs, and it becomes very difficult to get jobs, and they compete with people who are well off, who have their hands, who have everything that they need. So I want to support this motion, and I want to also say that even in the procurement sector, there is a section that said that we need to give people with disability and youth jobs. These things should be implemented so that these people who are living with disability can also earn a living from where they sit. So I want to support the committee for the good job that they have done. I support.
Mover, you now have under 4 minutes to reply.
Use this. Give me the mic. Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I will maximize my 4 minutes. First and foremost, I think we should know that we are all candidates of a disability. At one time in life, you may become disabled. So, the way you want to be treated during that time
please treat disabilities, people with disability. Honorable Speaker, as I sincerely thank the members of my committee and all members of parliament who have, all of them, 100% supported this report. Nobody opposed, and they supported 100%. I sincerely thank all of them. The law says that we should reach the 5% progressively. So I think that one is a peg, and we need to have to change or amend the law, because 14 years down the line, the institutions are still arguing that those who are even 0.5%, they are arguing they are moving progressively to 5%, 14 years down the line. And therefore, I think there's need for amendment of that act. And my committee will be ready to prepare the amendments and bring to this House again. Honorable Speaker, disabled people are not only discriminated in employment, as we are now discussing, but they are discriminated from child rearing. When a family has some 2 children, one disabled and one able, they tend to support more, even in terms of feeding the one who is able. And so the discrimination starts from the child rearing, through education systems, through to employment, and even burial. When a disabled person dies, the burial, the send off is given, he or she is given, is not the same as the other one. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to set up institutions that are going to take care of disabled. Finally, I beg to move this report. Thank you. I beg to reply. Thank you.
Very much, Chair, Departmental Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. For the convenience of the House, the question in this particular motion will be put the next time. It will be scheduled to be considered by the House Business Committee. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, report of the Auditor General on financial statements of selected state corporations.
The Chairperson, Public Investments Committee on Commercial Affairs and Energy, Honorable Kusing. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this golden opportunity to move this report this evening. Allow me, Honorable Speaker, to start by saying that I beg to move that this House adopts the first report of the Public Investment Committee on Commercial Affairs and Energy on the examination of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial year, on the financial statements of state corporations for the financial years running up to 2020-2021, Honorable Speaker, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, December 6, 2023. Honorable Speaker, which are these state corporations that it is in our report today, Honorable Speaker? The agencies are as follows, Speaker. One is Engineers Board of Kenya for the financial year 2017 all through to 2021. Two, Honorable Speaker, is Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, for the financial years running to 2021, as I said earlier. Three is Competition Authority of Kenya, CAK, running to the same financial year I've just mentioned, Speaker. Four is Central Bank of Kenya, CBK. And five, East African Portland Cement Company, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, this being our maiden report, will allow me to appreciate and thank my committee for a very good work. This is an auditing and Public Investment Committee Speaker is terrible committee. You cannot conclude things quickly, you cannot move, because until when they are cleared, they are never cleared, Honorable Speaker. So I want to thank the able committee, my colleagues, who have really persevered and waited and Honorable Speaker, led by public interest. Of course, this is a committee that is guided by public interest. Speaker, allow me as procedure dictates, that this committee speaker is guided or established by our standing orders. The Public Investment Committee speaker is established, that is of Commercial Affairs and Energy, is established under National Assembly Standing Orders 206A, and is responsible for the examination of the working of public investments based on the audited reports and accounts in the sectors of energy, environment, general economic and commercial affairs, Honorable Speaker, and is mandated to do the following. 1, examine the reports and accounts of the public investments. 2, Honorable Speaker, is to examine the reports of any of the Auditor General on the public investment, and Honorable Speaker, 3rd, to examine in the context of autonomy and efficiency of the public investment whether the affairs of the public investment are being managed in accordance with sound financial and business principles and prudent commercial affairs, Speaker. And then finally, the committee is limited to schedules, and this is very important, Honorable Speaker, this being the maiden report, that this Parliament, the last Parliament, Public Investment Committee, Honorable Speaker, was auditing the entire parastatals or investment. But this year, it is different. That is why, Speaker, it's good to mention for record that the committee is limited to schedule of entities issued by the Honorable Speaker on 8 December 2022, pursuant to Standing Order number 206, subsection 6, comprising the total, if you put all the investment we are auditing, Honorable Speaker, or we examine the books, the total to 132. Maybe the entire country might be about 400, but because of the wisdom of the House, that was difficult even for the last committee to finish anything, Honorable Speaker, and that this work is time-taking. Then the House decided to divide them, and those ones, the ones I've said, 132, Honorable Speaker, were given to this committee. So, Speaker, fundamentally, Speaker, to say in this House is, or as I move this important report is, what is the yardstick? What is the, for example, what somebody might say, the marking scheme? What are we reflecting on when we are looking at these books that have been brought by the General Speaker? Then the question is, Honorable Speaker, what guides the committee in examining those books? What guides the committee? And allow me to share with the House, Honorable Speaker, that we are guided by legal infrastructure, particularly the Constitution. Number 1, we are guided by Article 10 of the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. What does it say? It sets the principles of public finances, which include, Honorable Speaker, openness and accountability in those agencies. Further, it includes public participation, financial matters, as it is described for in that Article 201, sub-Article A, use of public money in prudent and responsible way. That is a fundamental instrument, which is the Constitution of Kenya, that is the yardstick or the reflector or the mirror upon which my committee, Honorable Speaker, is guided when we are looking at those documents or books that are being brought before the committee. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, we are also guided by Part 6 of Chapter 12 of the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya in terms of finances. What does that say? Article 226, Honorable Speaker, is good on record for me to say, on behalf of my able committee and honorable members, that this Article 226 deals with accounts and audit of public entities, and it provides as follows. Because then Kenyans will be saying, so what are you using to look at these books? What is the yardstick? What is the, like, the holder of public office, including political law or instructions, is personally liable for any loss arising from that use, remains holder of that public office. Very important, Honorable Speaker, that we are guided, punishable, or that is punished. That individual, Honorable Speaker, is also culpable as an individual to be punished. Further, we are guided by Article 227 of the sub-article, shall do in accordance with the system that is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. That is what we pay attention, Honorable Speaker, when we examine this particular book, Honorable Speaker. Further, we are guided by Section 68 of Public Finance Management Act, number 18 of 2012, which, Honorable Speaker, members, stipulates that the responsibilities of accounting officers for national government entities, parliament, and judiciary. To enhance accountability, the National Assembly, through the oversight role, is asked to ensure that the resources of public entities are used in lawful, authorized, effective, efficient, economical, transparent, in a transparent manner, and further Section 68, subsection 1, by accounting officers, it says, Honorable Speaker, similarly, Section 72 of PFM Act guides this committee in examining those documents, Honorable Speaker. It's fundamental that, Speaker, I mentioned that because then Kenyans and the people outside there will be asking us, what are you using to examine these books? What are you looking at when you're examining these books? Fundamentally, let me say, Honorable Speaker, that we're guided by the Constitution and the legal infrastructure. So, Speaker, as I move, then the question is, how did we arrive where we are? Which then I'll say, Speaker, in arriving at this report, Honorable Speaker, my committee held more than 38 sittings, Honorable Speaker, in which we extensively examined the reports of Auditor General on the audited financial statements of these 5 institutions which I have submitted to you, Honorable Speaker, and the House, and I'm inviting the members to agree with us. And in doing that, Honorable Speaker, I remember in the first induction of Liaison Committee, I think in Kisumu, we were also guided, Speaker, that public investment committees should include public participation in their reporting. And Speaker, my committee really tried to follow that, and I'll give you in a minute. Honorable Speaker, further, the committee also limited to schedules and the agencies which I've said. Speaker, what is the model of our report? Before I delve into these organizations that are presented to you. So what are the model of our report? Our report, Honorable Speaker, has, of course, the audit query, if you look at our report which I presented to you, and then management responses. After management responses, Honorable Speaker, we have public participation within the report, which is, Honorable Speaker, we bring in the major stakeholders of that audit query or that concerns that audit query. That is the third level of the structure of our reporting, if you look at our report. Then the fourth, Honorable Speaker, we have observations of the committee. Having listened the entities in terms of management report, having listened to other stakeholders, sometimes we call it roundtable, Honorable Speaker, and I'll give you an example in a minute when we are doing central bank. Because, Honorable Speaker, we cannot conclude an audit query unless we also bring in all other stakeholders that surround that audit query. And then finally, we do our recommendations. That is the structure of this report before you, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, let me now delve to the organizations or the agencies which were presented to you to give you how then this report or how we examine using the infrastructures which I've just said. Honorable Speaker, let me start with Central Bank. The Auditor General brought in a query concerning Central Bank, a number of them, and what really took a long time within us, Honorable Speaker, was about KSMS, Kenya School of Monetary Studies. Kenya School of Monetary Studies, as everybody knows, Honorable Speaker, trains or in-service training for Central Bank staff. And some time back, that organization was made like it is a legal entity or a parastatal, Honorable Speaker. Then in between, it's in between. So Auditor General said, hey, look here, this institution is governing or board of directors of Central Bank were also board of directors of KSMS. So they are adding twice. So they would work in Central Bank, then after that they go to KSMS, you know where it is, then they also earn allowances. Nowadays, as you see, these people are being paid or they will be earning twice. And yet this institution should be like a department. So what happened, Mr. Speaker? Central Bank and National Treasury, which are like shareholders, agreed at one point to dissolve it and make it a department of Central Bank. After everything was done, Mr. Speaker, something happened which caught the eye of the General. That's why it brought to our committee, or my committee, Mr. Speaker. Something happened. They passed the resolution to dissolve KSMS and make it a department under Central Bank. Then I don't know what happened. Maybe Mr. Speaker, and that is why I think these entities are hearing us, that they should be led by public interest, not individual interest. Somebody in Central Bank wrote a letter to AG and asked that that process should not conclude. And then it stopped. So the General, when they were auditing the books, they said, what is the problem of this? Why don't you proceed in the solution of KSMS? Because of the reason which I just asked you, Mr. Speaker, that this was like double payment of directors of Central Bank and so on. So when we got Mr. Speaker, when we interrogated it, we brought Central Bank, we brought KSMS, we brought AG, we brought Solicitor General, and we asked them to table their reasons why it cannot be concluded to be dissolved as an agency and not a department, Mr. Speaker, under Central Bank. We asked National Treasury to defend itself. And before my committee, Mr. Speaker, they failed to defend themselves. And then they said, you cannot earn from this side and this side. And further, we asked National Treasury, if we were to make it a parastatal, where will it get money? And National Treasury failed. Why? Because they are arguing and saying we can look at other financial institutions to fund KSMS to become a parastatal. Then we said, I think that is not a dream that can be realizable. So, Mr. Speaker, we recommended before the House that that institution should be made a department under Central Bank. Central Bank defended it, and it is true, Mr. Speaker. You cannot earn from this institution and that institution. Secondly, it is funded 100% by Central Bank. So there is no reason why that cannot be a department of Central Bank. Third, that it offers in-service training to our able officers of Central Bank. So we ask ourselves, what is the reason of you making this institution different or separate? We have no, National Treasury, we have no money to be able to run it. We agreed on the Speaker, opposed, and therefore we decline National Treasury because we found that there was something missing, and some people are being driven by private interest rather than public interest. And that KSMS, we recommend, Mr. Speaker, should therefore be dissolved and be made a department under Central Bank. Number two, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, which you have allowed me, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very happy, is to look at what we said on East African Portland Cement. Speaker, East African Portland Cement is a government entity that manufactures cement. But it has been really in problems. It has been really in problems, Honorable Speaker. So what the General brought to us is that this is an institution, for example, like the Speaker, if you read in our report, it is like an institution in ICU because it is insolvent. It cannot run itself. If you look at the investment they have, if you look at their total worth with against liabilities, Honorable Speaker, that institution can collapse. Or rather, it has collapsed, but they are fighting. So what happened, Honorable Speaker? And then when that question came before my committee, we did a lot of interaction and examination, Honorable Speaker. We brought in the ministries that are concerned. That is industrialization. We brought in the shareholders, including Lavat, Honorable Speaker. Of course, you know Lavat is one of the biggest manufacturers of cement in the world. They also own shares in East African Portlands. We brought in NSSF, which also shares, National Treasury, and everybody, Honorable Speaker. We did interrogation. Out of all that, which you can see in our report, Honorable Speaker, out of all that, because of interest of time, Honorable Speaker, we came up with some resolutions and recommendations that we want to ask the House to agree with us. One of the recommendations, Honorable Speaker, is that as a stopgap measure, they have a lot of land. They have a lot of land. And the peers for industrialization, which is actually the peers in charge of East African Portland segment. And our thinking, Speaker, is that we should be having a government agency that makes cement, so that we have government setting the prices. If we allow, Speaker, prices to be set by private sector, everything, I'm telling you we are doomed. And now, particularly this time, when we are having now economic strains, that we should be having all the time a government agency that keeps on maintaining prices. You remember, Speaker, of course, you and I were in last Parliament when I was defending Kenya Race, when I was defending Kenya Railway. I was saying that government must have transport so that it can keep some level of pricing. Look at this now. I'm very proud of SGR. Everybody wants to go to Mombasa is SGR. Not even now matatus and buses. Speaker, that was a fundamental item, regardless of how it was procured. But government must maintain so that it keeps on controlling the prices. If we allow private sector, I'm talking about this so that even also government listens on this East African Portland segment. If we allow government, if we allow private entities to be driving all these sectors, then we will have this thing will go out of proportion, Honorable Speaker. So what we recommend to survive, for this agency to survive, we recommend, Honorable Speaker, that one, they can sell part of the land so that they can remain liquid and be able to pay those staff. And three, that government can be able to look at it, if possible, to privatize it. And when they are privatizing, we put a caution that government should not privatize 100% of some of these entities that they are aiming to privatize. And our colleagues are listening from the other side. So our committee are saying we cannot privatize our institution 100%. What about if this becomes rogue? What happens in future? So government has had a hand so that if these private people become rogue, that's just the way. Or then we apply the policy of three things, Mambo Matat. If they become rogue, Honorable Speaker, this is a country, we are in a country of independent people, and we are independent. Finally, Honorable Speaker, so that I can allow my colleagues to make contribution, is this institution called EPRA. EPRA also came to us, and something very interesting, Honorable Speaker, that auditor raised was about the CEO, the recruitment of the managing director at that particular time. The paperwork were not properly set, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, then we were given that to look at. And before us, we almost actually did an interview, Honorable Speaker. We brought this, so we had an option to say, we send this person home because of paperwork, or what happens? So we brought even the interviewer, the people who interviewed him. We looked at whether this person is qualified, and I'll tell you, Honorable Speaker, Kiptopa Goria is very qualified. In fact, he really helped our country during a very turbulent time in the oil sector, Honorable Speaker. And he's very competent, to be honest, very competent. So what did we say? We said, Honorable Speaker, in our recommendation, we didn't find sufficient reasons to send that gentleman home just because of our paper that somebody, and it was not his problem, it was a problem of the board. We brought in the chair who is a very prominent and reasonable person in this country, Honorable Speaker. Somebody just decided to, I don't know whether he plucked one paper or not, but he convinced us that he's a competent Kenyan that he can be allowed to finish his term, Honorable Speaker. We just very many remarks, Honorable Speaker, because my colleagues and the members of the committee can be able to fill in the gaps that I might not have gotten everything. Or presented everything, Honorable Speaker, because my colleagues are here, they can also present those issues that I might have not touched in all of them. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask my able Vice Chair, Dr. Kogo, to second, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Honorable Dr. Lilian Gugu.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker and grandson of Asumbi. I rise to second this particular report from the Public Investments Committee on Energy and Commercial Affairs. And I want to thank my Honorable Chair, for being very elaborate and he's been very elaborate and intentional in presenting his report to the extent that it is so clear. Honorable Speaker, allow me, Honorable Speaker, to make mention that audit committees are generally not punitive. We do not undertake audits so that somebody is punished, but we want our institutions that are audited thereof to adopt best practices according to what has been put down for them, so that we account for public funds, we account for public resources, but even better still, we deliver the best for this mission. And with that in mind, Honorable Speaker, the report has been written, but there were general recommendations by the committee, and it was observed that there was general poor accounting standards and general incapacity of some accounting officers in the specific organizations that were reviewed, Honorable Speaker. And to this extent, I think that due advice was given so that they could adopt best practices, Honorable Speaker. It was also noted, Honorable Speaker, that there was a long time span on pending pertinent matters, that you find things, matters, audit issues that were pending from as far as 2013, Honorable Speaker. And I think the committee has endeavored to make sure that most matters are resolved, Honorable Speaker. And also, where there was need to submit documentary evidence, Honorable Speaker, to support the audit queries, then there were less submissions of such submissions, Honorable Speaker. And another observation, Honorable Speaker, that was very important, and the committee seriously pursued it, is unsecured and untitled land holdings for these particular organizations, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we realize that these particular organizations, they hold this land in trust for the being generated to the best interest of the public. But if that be the case, Honorable Speaker, the committee has been found that there is proper accountability for this money, Honorable Speaker. That even if there is also money that has been obtained from whatever source, this money is well accounted for, it is properly used, Honorable Speaker. And also, I want to thank the committee, Honorable Speaker, as we deliver this report on the floor of this House, Honorable Speaker, that the committee has been so committed to its work. It is in audit committees, Honorable Speaker, specifically this particular committee, that members sit for hours and hours on end to generate this report and to examine and look at the audit queries, Honorable Speaker. And I want to thank my chair, Honorable Speaker, for having brought up the issue of the substantive MD of IPRA, because it was everywhere that he was irregularly irregularly got into office, and it was a matter of public concern, of Honorable Speaker. And from the report that we have had, Honorable Speaker, it is good, Honorable Speaker, that Kenyans give fellow Kenyans a chance, because at times insinuations are made that particular individuals are in office by dint of their inclination to a particular there was going to be any reduction or any stagnation in the cost of fuels in this country, Honorable Speaker. And I must say that at some point this particular leader was pushed to the wall. To respond to Kenyans to the extent that they were going to work day and night and give Kenyans a good report. Not only a good report, but a pointed direction towards the reduction of the cost of fuel. And if you have been living in Kenya like me, Honorable Speaker, in the recent past, there have not been those alarming reports on the increment on the cost of fuel, Honorable Speaker. Allow me, Honorable Speaker, also to say that there is absolute commitment by this particular committee to serve the Kenyans and examine adherence to constitutional provisions under which we are mandated to work as a committee, so that Kenyans get value for their money, so that even these institutions don't lose money, but better still, if there is need to generate money, Honorable Speaker, it is done out of goodwill. And having said that, Honorable Speaker, allow me also to say that it is important, and I hope all through the Speaker, I hope all these organizations are listening to these parliamentary proceedings. It is important that public land is secured and ownership authenticated to the extent that what land that belongs to the public remains of public and it is not grabbed by Kenyans who are greedy for land. With that, Honorable Speaker, I second. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Dr. Lilian, you seem to be erring.
Sorry?
You seem to be erring.
To be?
Hurrying up.
Hurrying up?
Have you...
it is up to 9 in the night.
I just wanted to assure you that you still had 10 minutes, but I'm grateful you have seconded. So let me put the question. Let me propose the question, Honorable Members. Honorable Members, I propose the question that this House adopt the report of the Public Investment Committee on Commercial Affairs and Energy on its examination of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of selected state corporations. Laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 6th December 2023.
Speaker, they can generally raise funds, and I know that institution, they may not need money to come from central bank to run it. With that alone, they can raise enough A in A so that it can basically run on its own. So I support that. The other recommendation they made that I again support is the issue, the East African Portland cement. So Speaker, the chair said something, that the government in some industry, in some parts of the industry should actually own institutions that produce either services or goods that are in public demand, that are central in our development. Cement is key in our growth. Now we are talking of affordable houses. The biggest product there is cement. And if you leave the private sector on its own, actually they form a cartel. Even if you put regulatory measures, private sector will always form an association or something and create a cartel. Therefore, it is important to have a government institution that is producing the same product and therefore can set the standards and also stabilize the prices. And if it is efficient, it can produce enough, it will definitely stabilize the price. So the prices, except that it needs a lot of integrity in the management, because more often than not, they are also consumed by the integrity issues in the private sector. I think that is a good thing to pursue. I think we see it in Kenya Airways, and the chairman mentioned the standard gauge railways, which in my view, I always hope that we'll stop seeing these big tankers on the road, so that all those goods are actually transported by SGR. But I think that's a diversion. I think that recommendation is good. The other recommendation is that they actually have a lot of land which they can sell to offset some of their debts, and therefore be self-sufficient. And it can be privatized, and they put the caution that is necessary that if it is privatized, there should be majority shareholding by the government, so that we again stabilize it and protect it. I'm really happy with the report that they gave, that they actually found that the MD of EPRA was kind of subject of witch hunt, and they said that person should go on, because we must be careful not to destabilize officers basically because of where they come from. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the issue on secured land holdings in government institutions is a big one. They brought it out. It's not only in these institutions. Even if you go to schools, Mr. Speaker, primary schools, secondary schools, a lot of those schools own land, and they do not, they're not secured, they do not have titles, and that, Mr. Speaker, is what brings the issue, issues that these pieces of land can be lost and become subject of land grabbing. And I think I support the recommendation that these pieces of land should be secured, not only by Portland Cement, but by all other government institutions. And but we must be careful that it is during these processes that sometimes these pieces of land are lost. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support this report.
Honorable Beatrice Elachi, to be followed by the Honorable Dr. Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support this report and to appreciate or to thank the committee for the work they have done. Mr. Speaker, before I even indulge into the report, I just want to say that when we look at this report, Mr. Speaker, we are now talking of financials year 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And Mr. Speaker, this is where now we find our country always into a crisis, because even as we bring in the reports to the House, or even when the Auditor General is going through this report, definitely time has lapsed, it's gone. Many things that were done wrongly, you won't even know where the institution now is. Now we are discussing the institution in 2024. And you want to help this institution to look at their audits themselves and try and support mechanisms that can rectify a few of the queries that the Auditor General has asked. And so, Mr. Speaker, if we want to move as a country, we must look of a system where either we have not a full audit, but the Auditor General has some semblance of what is happening in this institution even before now she comes to audit the institution fully, so that she's able to tell us that when I went in at that time, I did a brief summary, and this is when the institution was at this. And so when I look at the Competition Authority of Kenya, during that time, Mr. Speaker, and the report says that when you look at now, and you imagine that the authority is supposed to deal with a competition, with trying to ensure that we are able to function, and it has its clear mandate in terms of promotion and enforcement of compliance in competition per the Act. But then now when you come and look at what they have now said their major achievements, so they are talking during COVID's time, and they say one, facilitated investment of over 140 billion shillings into the national economy. And through the reduction in the number of days taken to analyze the mergers, as they say, but then they say
In second, they facilitated implementation of Article 46 of the Constitution on consumer welfare by expediting an estimated Kenya shillings 12.4 million in consumer savings. And then they come and say they enhance competition in the market, leading to, among others, lower consumer prices. But then why am I saying the Auditor General needs now to help us? It's because everything they are telling us that is good, today it has been overtaken by events. We are now back. Things are more higher than when they said they facilitated recovery of delayed payments and all those things. But we have moved. And so if we want to see the economy recover, there must be a different way and mechanisms of dealing with this. And so for me, as much as they have given us a very clean bill at that time, today, where is the consumer? Is a question that all of us will be asking the Competition Authority, because we know today things are not the way they are. And therefore, even as we bring in these reports, it's important for us to always have a question of really explaining us currently, as even as we give this to Kenyans, we must tell Kenyans these were reports of 2017, 2018, 2019, and therefore when you hear good reports, don't come and now question Parliament, why is it not yet they can see things are tough, the economy is struggling and recovering, but then at a slow pace, the dollar is still very high, and so all those things. And so I'll end up going now to page 98 of the report, Mr. Speaker, now where we are talking about Portland. And you remember now we have a case, I don't know whether they have finalized, because when you read the report, they have come in and explained how everything is happening in Portland, but then more importantly on the issue of land. And this Mavoko parcel land where many people lost property, but then they come and say they will be selling this land, which how I wish they would have now given us a better response to say that the land they are going to sell, they will sell to the people who are now living within that land. Because we know very well the land was infested with illegal grabbers. Some are not illegal grabbers, some are us who have made them get into that situation. But all I want to say about this land of Portland is that even as they sell their land at the price they have said, Mr. Speaker, isn't it important, and I'm hoping the committee will do a visit to look at it properly, because you can sell the land and then find yourselves in the same crisis that were there. So, Mr. Speaker, as I finalize, the most important thing with this, so that we do not go back to what we saw, is to ensure even the monies they are saying they want to sell, give the first opportunity to people who would wish, who are within that land, and then after you have sold that land by public tender, as it is said, you ensure that even what you have sold is able to come and inject more financial support within Portland Cement. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the most important thing in this report, and I want to thank the committee, is when you look at the management response, when you look at how the report flows, the only thing that I would wish us to have is maybe the Secretariat to assist, so that in every of the observations you do, you do your management response, then just do a small summary for members to clearly understand, so that when I'm talking about it, let's say for example, if I'm talking of the management response of this land, you find that it explains very well the LR number and the portion, and since being transferred to KCB, it gives all that. But then you come to the second, further on all remaining parcels. Now someone will ask himself, the remaining parcels, which is I think 9 or 7, the company is at an advanced discussion with the national government on building synergy and alignment of the company's strategic objectives with the development agenda. Now, it's so huge until you even wonder how you can explain that to Kenyans, so it's important. But lastly, Mr. Speaker, also, there is need for us to ask ourselves in terms of all these corporations, and especially in the energy sector. There's this public limited company where every corporation speaks about it in terms of we've had consent, and so many of the lands also is told it's going to affordable housing, which is okay. But then from there on, we must ask ourselves, when now people will be buying these houses, are you buying it now with Portland? Are you buying it directly with Bomayangu from government? Is it still an asset of the corporations? So it has to be very clear, and so that because it has a title, that title is for the company, and it will be very important. Then we'll understand after you have bought, how do anyone who has bought in affordable housing will be able to be told that this land, the title is now together, and as a team of those who have bought those houses, they're able to know who has the title. Will it be government or the corporation itself? So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
The Honorable Dr. Ilva Fosaundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to support the report by the Public Investment Committee on Commerce, Commercial Affairs and Energy on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of selected state corporations. Honorable Speaker, and the state corporations being examined here are the Engineers Board of Kenya for the financial year 2017-2021, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority 2016 to 2021, and the Competition Authorities of Kenya 2017-2021, Central Bank of Kenya 2018-2021, and East Africa Portland Cement Company for almost the same period of time. Honorable Speaker, before we even delve into the merits of the report or others, probably in its wisdom, we must thank the last Parliament for considering and finding it wise to split Public Investment Committee. You can see, Honorable Speaker, the backlog, and the country must be very clear. This backlog, it becomes even difficult to pin down any executive member, any officer, any accounting officer for any